Setting: Shadow Emergence Campaign, 2393 CE. Location: Harmony Station, Stellar Syndicate territory. The alarm's shrill cry cut through Mikhail Okafor's dreams, wrenching him from memories of Nairobi colony, back to his quarters aboard Harmony Station. His hand moved to the emergency beacon that could end his deception and call the extraction team. Tarek Nightclaw. The name settled over him. Systems Engineer, Prowler Clan. The alarm died. Mikhail steadied his breathing. The neural implant behind his left ear pulsed, synthetic ferox patterns pressing against his awareness. The pain was a constant, dull ache of the identity overlay. One of 3 Intel had developed for deep cover operations. He sat up. The apartment showed 24 months of deception. Ferox hunting trophies on the walls, predatory dietary supplements, scent markers his bio-spoofing implants produced, all supporting the illusion of Tarek Nightclaw. The communication panel blinked. Incoming priority message. Mikhail's stomach clenched at the unexpected pattern. Prometheus, communicating through relay stations spanning the hostile space between humanity's hidden colonies and syndicate territory. The device, no larger than a wedding ring, embedded in his skull where scanners would mistake it for a long-healed calcification. He pressed his thumb to the biometric reader, waited for confirmation, then sub-vocalized the activation phrase, "Package secure." The message materialized. Time compression necessary. Enhanced security protocols detected. Window closing. Window measured in days, not weeks. Cascade specifications primary objective. Intel confirms breakthrough in crystalline matrix harmonics. Extended range FTL capability. Your location implementing biosecurity measures, neural pattern analysis. Current cover may not withstand enhanced scrutiny. Confirm receipt. Stand by for emergency protocols. The window was closing fast. Mikhail felt the weight of 2 years of infiltration. Learning ferox pack dynamics, studying crystal resonance theory, building relationships with people who would hate him if they knew the truth. All to reach Dr. Yenna Salthara's research on the Cascade drive, enhanced FTL that could enable operations currently out of reach. Extended range would transform humanity's strategic position, enabling deep space operations, expanding viable territory, and eliminating multi-jump patterns that risk exposure. He composed his confirmation. Target viable. Parameters understood. Will attempt extraction within time frame. The transmitter compressed the thought into encrypted packets for the next burst window. A static spike masked the transmission. Mikhail processed the implications of the update. Enhanced neural scanning would detect his prototype implants within days, possibly hours. 3 operatives had died developing the technology. Intelligence had warned the implants were experimental, untested against military-grade scanners. But 15 days was insufficient to penetrate Dr. Salthara's laboratory, much less extract complete Cascade drive specifications. He tried to sleep, failed. The nightmare came in fragments, as it always did. White surgical lights. The acrid smell of sterilization fields. Voices he couldn't quite make out, discussing technical parameters that slipped away the moment he tried to focus on them. Cold metal against his skull. The sensation of something being installed, calibrated. Mikhail jolted awake, heart pounding, bio-spoofing implants pulsing with stress markers. The nightmare's details were already fading, leaving only the familiar dread. The scar behind his left ear ached with phantom pain. Surgery, he reminded himself, forcing his breathing to steady. Just surgery. Extensive operations and bioengineering to make him look like a ferox. Bio-spoofing implant installation, scent glands. Unconscious through it all, they said, but his mind filled in the blanks anyway. He couldn't remember the actual procedure, They'd said the medical amnesia was standard, expected, that detailed memories of neural surgery could cause psychological complications. 2 years later, the nightmares remained. "Stop," he commanded himself. "Focus on the mission." The apartment's chronometer showed 0347. 3 hours until his shift. He wouldn't sleep again tonight. His work shift alarm chimed. He stood and donned Tarek Nightclaw. The biospoofing system required morning recalibration, scent markers, pheromone production, muscle tension changes that would register on Ferox's behavioral sensors. Surface scans could be fooled reliably, but the implants had only hours of effectiveness against deep neural scanning, the kind that would detect artificial overlays and awareness manipulation. The neural overlay was the most delicate. As he activated the secondary personality matrix, alien memories flooded his mind. Satisfaction from successful hunts on the Prowler homeworld, defeat when fictional packmates died in territorial disputes, burning shame from exile that drove him to seek work among other species. Each memory constructed from hundreds of hours of interrogation data. Sometimes Mikhail wondered if the memories were becoming more real than he was. He dressed in systems engineer coveralls, checking hidden pockets containing specialized equipment. The memory crystallizer was disguised as a diagnostic tool, its quantum state matrix storing data equivalent to an entire local networks in crystalline structures no larger than a fingernail. The extraction beacon looked like a medical implant. The corridor buzzed with early shift activity. Harmony Station housed nearly 12,000 beings from 6 species, all working for the Stellar Syndicate, extracting crystal and carrying out research. Passing the administrative section, he caught fragments. Processing 3 new transfers from the outer sectors, assignments by tomorrow. Mikhail nodded to a Fluvian cargo handler, exchanged pleasantries with a Lightweaver maintenance tech. He'd built a web of casual relationships, friendly enough to avoid suspicion, distant enough to avoid scrutiny. The engineering section occupied 3 levels, where crystal resonance chambers thrummed constantly. Mikhail found engineering lead Kessa Swiftpaw reviewing assignments at her workstation, amber eyes scanning technical specifications. "Tarek." She looked up, scarred muzzle twitching, ears flicking forward in packmate recognition. She shifted to maintain vision of both him and the entrance, classic Ferox territorial awareness. "Your scent carries exhaustion markers, too many double shifts." Exhausted hunters miss the kill. Concern made Mikhail's chest tighten. Kessa was a natural alpha, protective, fiercely loyal. Even in corporate hierarchy, she showed traditional Ferox Velthara, her territorial instinct to defend her engineering packmates. It made using her trust easier and more difficult at the same time. "The pack survives, the hold endures," Mikhail replied with the traditional Ferox response. The words tasted bitter. "What's the assignment?" Kessa's ears flicked forward. "Sector 7 matrix maintenance. The primary resonance chamber shows harmonic drift after yesterday's deep extraction. Could be a simple recalibration or structural stress in the matrix foundations." She glanced at her personnel roster. "We're getting a new systems specialist tomorrow from the outer sectors. I'll put him on routine maintenance until he settles. He seems cautious." Mikhail nodded and asked, "Want me to run diagnostics first?" "Already done." She handed him a data pad. "The readings are unusual. Resonance patterns I haven't seen. You might spot something I missed, though." Mikhail scanned the data with interest. The harmonic signatures were strange, too complex for natural crystal formation, too organized for random drift. "How long has this been developing?" 3 days, maybe 4. It started after Dr. Salthara's team finished their last experiments. Dr. Salthara. Mikhail kept his expression neutral despite excitement. "What kind of experiments?" "Classified beyond my access. But they've been pulling serious power through the matrices." Whatever they're working on, it's big. I'll take a look. Mikhail tucked the pad into his tool belt. If there's degradation, we'll need to map the entire network. Careful down there, Kessa said, tone shifting. Some chambers are running hot. Unusual thermal signatures in the deep sections. Micro-tremors in the mining levels. Nothing dangerous yet, but the warning was genuine. He nodded and headed for the transport lift, mind working through implications. If Dr. Salthara's experiments were causing harmonic drift, they were making remarkable progress or courting disaster. Sector 7 lay in the deeper levels, where the main crystal formations provided power and computational capacity for the research stations above. The transport lift descended through corporate offices, residential quarters, and industrial sectors before reaching the core. The maintenance tunnels were a maze of corridors and alcoves lit by crystal glow. Mikhail moved through the environment with practiced ease, tools scanning for the anomalous readings Kessa detected. The resonance chambers hummed with stored energy, each precisely tuned. The air vibrated with harmonics, carrying the metallic taste of ionized particles and the ozone scent of high-energy containment fields. He found the drift source in Chamber 7 Delta, resonance crystals that should have produced stable harmonics. Instead, the readings showed complex interference patterns that seemed to result from an external source. Mikhail connected diagnostic equipment and traced signal paths. The interference wasn't random. It was structured, layered, showing signs of the matrix manipulation described in theoretical papers about Cascade resonance. This wasn't research data. This was evidence of an active Cascade drive prototype. His communicator chirped with a station-wide announcement. All personnel, new security protocols will be implemented tomorrow morning. Enhanced biosecurity scanning will be required for restricted area access. This is a routine upgrade to protect research assets. The word struck him like a blow. Tomorrow morning. Less than 24 hours before scanners might detect his neural implants and biospoofing systems. 2 years of infiltration would end with execution. He continued diagnostics methodically, thoughts racing through possibilities. The Cascade drive specifications were here, probably less than 500 meters away in Dr. Salthara's secured laboratory. But the new security protocols would make penetration nearly impossible. Unless, Mikhail's fingers stilled as the idea took shape. The crystal matrix degradation wasn't accidental. It was a side effect of the Cascade experiments. The research team would need emergency maintenance access to prevent a resonance cascade. He'd observed that maintenance personnel could exploit a vulnerability. Emergency override accepted cached biometric data from the last 12 hours, a feature designed to prevent lockouts during crises. All he needed was a big enough crisis. A message arrived from Zara Brightwave in optical analysis. Tarek, stop by my lab when you finish in Sector 7. There are some strange readings that might relate to your matrix work. Zara. Young, brilliant, trusting. In 18 months of casual friendship, she hadn't questioned his background. She'd helped him understand security systems without realizing it, introduced him to the research divisions, given him insights into Dr. Salthara's work patterns. She trusted him, which made her a perfect asset. Mikhail finished the diagnostic report, documenting drift patterns that would support his maintenance requests. His mind worked through the sequence of events that would give him access to the Cascade drive specifications. He would need Zara's help, would need to manipulate her trust to bypass security systems. He was planning to use someone who considered him a friend. But thousands of humans remained in Draconis breeding programs, facilities deep in enemy space, where current FTL made rescue impossible. Multi-jump penetration meant certain detection. 2 years as Tarek Nightclaw had taught him to think like a predator. The hunt was everything, the prey's feelings irrelevant. But Ferox hunted for survival, not deception. This violated Kethmara, the honor debt owed to those who showed trust. He sealed the diagnostic report and returned to the surface levels, steeling himself for what must be done. In 14 days, he would either be dead or fleeing through hostile space. Tonight, he was Tarek Nightclaw, trusted friend and colleague, walking the corridors of a station that had become his home. Between the identities, he would discover which version was stronger and whether either would survive. The lift carried him upward through the station. Outside the viewports, the stars of the harmonic reach system glittered with an alien, indifferent light. The crystals far below continued their ancient song. Time was running out, and the hunt was about to begin. Sleep came in restless fragments. Each time Mikhail closed his eyes, his mind rehearsed security bypass sequences, fail-safes, extraction protocols. He checked the emergency beacon twice, once at 0200, again at 0430. The scar behind his ear throbbed with each pulse of the neural overlay, Tarek Nightclaw's manufactured memories pressing against his own like competing tides. By the time dawn crept across Harmony Station's viewports, checked by the chronometer reading 0612, he'd managed perhaps 90 minutes of broken rest. Each hour had crawled past, marked by position shifts and failed attempts to quiet his racing mind. The morning shift brought the usual bustle. Among the familiar faces, Mikhail noted the new specialist Kessa had mentioned, Tam Voss, who'd arrived yesterday, another systems specialist from the outer sectors, carrying himself with the quiet competence of someone accustomed to the harsh technical demands of deep space operations. Kessa had mentioned him during the shift assignment, noting his background suggested recent trauma that most attributed to dangerous working conditions. Zara Brightwave's laboratory occupied a corner of the research section, where natural starlight supplemented artificial illumination for her optical experiments. Through the viewport, the binary stars cast shifting gold and amber patterns across her workstation. To most humanoid species, it was beautiful. To a light weaver, it was a living symphony. Her dual citizenship, alliance by birth, syndicate by professional choice, had given her unique perspectives on both cultures' approaches to scientific research. Mikhail found her hunched over a holographic display showing complex wave interference patterns, crystalline hair reflecting data projections in prismatic cascades. The workspace showed the organized chaos of deep research, multiple holographic displays at different heights, the soft hum of optical analysis equipment, the faint ozone scent from high-energy photonic experiments. Tarek, thank you for coming. She looked up with enthusiasm that made their friendship both authentic and useful. Look at this. I'm seeing harmonic resonance in the optical spectrum that matches your matrix degradation patterns. Mikhail studied the display, comparing her readings to his diagnostic data from Sector 7. The correlation was undeniable and concerning. These measurements are from where? Research Sublevel 3, Dr. Salthara's secured laboratory sector. Zara manipulated the hologram, highlighting specific frequency bands. I've been monitoring atmospheric disturbance as part of my ambient analysis project, but these readings started 3 days ago. 3 days. The same time frame as the crystal matrix degradation. Mikhail leaned closer, letting his technical interest show. This suggests massive energy manipulation at the subatomic level. What experiments could produce this signature? That's what I was hoping you could tell me. Zara's luminescent freckles flickered with excitement, soft blue radiance pulsing with her elevated heart rate. At 28 light weaver years, she approached complex problems with enthusiasm that made her one of the station's most promising researchers. Your background in multi-system engineering, you've seen patterns like this before? The question highlighted the careful balance Mikhail maintained. His fictional backstory included experience with several crystal-based technologies, work on Ferox mining worlds, maintenance rotations on deep space platforms, giving him expertise that was useful without being suspiciously comprehensive. Similar but not identical, The harmonic layering suggests cascading resonance effects. Advanced stuff. Dangerous? Potentially. If the resonance cascades out of control. Mikhail paused, letting her imagination fill the implications. Has Dr. Salthara's team requested additional safety monitoring? Not that I know of. But their security clearance is way above mine. Zara's expression shifted to frustration. Sometimes I think the classification system here is more about politics than security. Mikhail kept his voice casual. What do you mean? Well, take the biosecurity upgrade they announced today. Enhanced neural scanning. Scanning for artificial neural overlays and awareness manipulation. It's like they're expecting infiltrators. She laughed, but there was nervous energy in the sound. I mean, who would try to infiltrate a crystal research station? It's not military intelligence. Mikhail managed a grin that was pure Ferox behavioral programming, even as his instincts screamed warnings. Pack paranoia. Someone in security probably saw shadows and convinced the administrators to upgrade everything. Maybe. But the timing is strange. Right after Dr. Salthara's team makes some breakthrough, we need enhanced security. Zara turned back to her display, manipulating data with practiced precision. I'm probably overthinking it. My alliance background makes me suspicious of security theater. But the correlation bothers me. She was more perceptive than Mikhail had credited, which made her both more valuable and dangerous. What kind of breakthrough? I don't know specifics, but there's been excitement in the crystal physics division. Dr. Salthara smiled yesterday, a real expression, not her usual polite professional mask. That's terrifying because she only shows real emotion when her research achieves something remarkable. When Dr. Salthara is happy, it means she's discovered something that could reshape physics. Mikhail filed that away. A happy Dr. Salthara suggested significant progress on the Cascade Drive project. The data he needed was likely complete and ready for extraction if he could access it before the enhanced security protocols went online. Could you show me the security access logs for Sublevel 3? He asked. If there's dangerous resonance buildup, we might need to coordinate emergency protocols. Zara hesitated, professional caution warring with personal trust. Trust 1. I probably shouldn't, but I can pull the recent access data, but anything beyond basic entry logs is above my clearance. She turned to her secondary console, fingers dancing across the interface. Within moments, a display materialized showing entry and exit patterns for the secured research areas. Mikhail studied the data, memorizing shift patterns, guard rotations, and routines. Dr. Salthara's laboratory complex was protected by 3 security layers: biometric verification, neural pattern authentication, and fractal encryption. But every security system had vulnerabilities, and Mikhail had spent time learning this station's weaknesses. Interesting, he murmured, pointing to a specific entry pattern. Dr. Salthara stays late every 3rd day. Consistent pattern. She's obsessive about her work, Zara confirmed. Lives in that lab. And the night security rotation? Standard pattern. Why? Mikhail realized he'd pushed too hard. Zara's expression had shifted from helpful to curious. Just wondering about emergency response times if we see Cascade failure. Need to know who to contact. The explanation satisfied her. Right. I should report these readings to the safety division. Good idea. But maybe wait until we understand the pattern better. Don't want to cause panic. Mikhail gestured to the harmonic data. Could you set up continuous monitoring? If the resonance is building toward cascade failure, we'll need early warning. Already planned. Zara saved the configuration and initiated automatic recording. I'll flag anything that exceeds the baseline by more than 15%. 15% would give Mikhail warning before any real crisis, while being sensitive enough to detect the problems he was planning to create. Perfect. I'll coordinate with engineering to monitor the physical infrastructure. They spent 20 minutes reviewing data, with Mikhail extracting information about security protocols, shift schedules, and access procedures. Zara's enthusiasm for technical collaboration made her the perfect intelligence source, especially since she had no idea she was providing it. When he left her laboratory, Mikhail carried a mental map of Dr. Salthara's security environment and the guilt of using someone you liked, that trusted you. The next few hours passed in preparation. Mikhail returned to his quarters to begin modifying his infiltration equipment. The biospoofing implants needed recalibration to handle deeper neural scans. The memory crystallizer required frequency adjustments to interface with syndicate encryption protocols. Most critically, he needed to prepare the tools that would create the crisis he needed. The harmonic disruptor was no larger than a stylus, designed to look like a standard crystal calibration tool. When activated, it would introduce specific frequency distortions into the station's resonance network, distortions that would appear to be natural cascade buildup while being precisely controlled. The device had taken human engineers 6 months to design, based on stolen syndicate technical specifications. As night fell over Harmony Station, Mikhail made his move. The maintenance tunnels provided access to critical infrastructure without triggering security alerts. His legitimate work assignment gave him reason to be in Sector 7, and his engineering credentials opened doors that would remain sealed to most. The primary harmonic regulation station was buried deep in the station's crystalline core, exactly where his stolen schematics indicated. Mikhail descended through progressively tighter maintenance tunnels, the air growing warmer as he approached the massive energy matrices. His diagnostic scanner registered normal harmonic patterns, for now. At a junction, he paused. The regulation station lay 50 meters ahead, through a maintenance crawl space barely wide enough for his shoulders. But between him and his target stood a newly installed biometric checkpoint that wasn't on the plans he had seen. The scanner hummed to life as he approached, red indicator light pulsing with warning. His implants provided legitimate Ferox biosignatures for standard checkpoints, but this looked military-grade, probably installed within the last 48 hours as part of the security upgrade Prometheus had warned about. Mikhail knelt beside the scanner, examining its architecture with practiced eyes. The casing showed Voidwalker engineering, sophisticated, paranoid, and decidedly non-standard for maintenance access. Someone in security had been busy. He pulled a bypass shunt from his toolkit, a device built from reverse-engineered syndicate components by the Boffins back home. The theory was sound. Fool the scanner into thinking it had already verified his identity by feeding it cached authentication data. But theory and practice diverged sharply when the consequences included execution. The shunt connected to the scanner's data port with a soft click. Mikhail held his breath as the device cycled through authentication protocols, searching for exploitable patterns in the security handshake. The engineers had spent months analyzing captured syndicate scanners to understand their vulnerability windows, the microsecond gaps where cached data could substitute for real verification. The scanner's light flickered from red to amber, progress. But amber meant partial authentication. The scanner wanted additional verification, probably neural pattern analysis or behavioral confirmation. Mikhail had neither cached data nor time to acquire it legitimately. He pulled his neural interface stylus, a tool disguised as a standard diagnostic probe but containing sophisticated pattern spoofing algorithms. The technicians who'd built it had promised it could fool most commercial-grade neural scanners. This scanner looked anything but commercial-grade. The stylus connected to the scanner's neural port. The algorithms engaged, feeding synthetic brainwave patterns based on thousands of hours of Ferox neural recordings. The scanner's processor churned through verification matrices, comparing the received patterns against expected signatures. Mikhail counted heartbeats. Intelligence doctrine said 30 seconds was the maximum safe exposure for neural spoofing. Beyond that, pattern analysis would detect the artificial harmonics. He'd been connected for 22 seconds already. 25 seconds. The scanner's light remained stubbornly amber. 28 seconds. Mikhail's hand moved toward the emergency disconnect, preparing to abort and find alternate routes. 30 seconds. The light shifted to green. Access granted. Mikhail disconnected the stylus with trembling hands and retrieved his bypass shunt. The first obstacle cleared through ingenuity and technological improvisation, exactly the kind of adaptability that made his species dangerous to those who underestimated them. The maintenance crawl space beyond was a claustrophobic tunnel barely 50 centimeters high, lined with power conduits and resonance dampeners. Mikhail crawled forward, feeling the temperature rise with every meter. The harmonic regulation station operated at temperatures that would be uncomfortable for most species. Apparently, the syndicate's security planners had decided environmental controls were unnecessary for areas nobody should access. They hadn't counted on human thermal tolerance. 15 meters in, Mikhail heard voices ahead. He froze, pressing himself flat against the tunnel floor. Through the humming of the power conduits, 2 maintenance workers were discussing shift schedules. Told them I needed the overtime, but Keftal says budget constraints. Could be worse. Could be down in the mining sections after yesterday's tremors. The voices faded as the workers moved away. Mikhail waited 30 seconds, then continued his crawl. The harmonic regulation station appeared ahead, a chamber 3 meters wide, dominated by a crystalline control matrix that pulsed with contained energy. Holographic displays showed resonance patterns throughout the station's infrastructure, each frequency carefully balanced. Beautiful, sophisticated, and about to become unstable. Mikhail pulled the harmonic disruptor from its concealed pocket, double-checking the programming. The device would introduce cascading instabilities over 18 hours, building toward an apparent crisis while remaining under his control. Dr. Salthara's team would need emergency maintenance access. The security protocols would shift to crisis response mode, and he would have his window. He examined the control matrix, searching for the optimal injection point. Too close to the primary systems, and the disruption would trigger immediate alarms. Too peripheral, and the effect would be insufficient. His target, the secondary resonance buffer, a system designed to smooth frequency variations. It expected occasional instabilities, making it perfect camouflage for deliberate interference. The disruptor connected to the buffer's diagnostic port with a soft thunk. Mikhail activated the programming sequence, watching as the device integrated itself into the station's harmonic network. To any scan, it would appear as a legitimate calibration tool performing routine adjustments. A proximity alarm chirped softly from his scanner. Someone was approaching the regulation station. Mikhail checked his chronometer. The disruptor needed another 40 seconds to complete its integration. If he disconnected now, the incomplete installation would leave forensic evidence of tampering. 35 seconds remaining. Footsteps echoed in the access corridor, accompanied by the distinctive chittering of Fluvian speech. Checking the thermal readings Kessa mentioned could be related to yesterday's harmonic drift. 20 seconds remaining. Mikhail positioned himself behind a support strut, maximizing the limited concealment available. His hand moved to the small plasma cutter in his belt, non-lethal but effective for creating emergency distractions. 10 seconds remaining. The Fluvian maintenance worker entered the chamber, scanning the control matrix with professional interest. His positioning put him directly between Mikhail and the only exit. 5 seconds. The worker's scanner swept across the chamber, analyzing thermal and harmonic signatures. If the device detected Mikhail's presence or the disruptor's integration, 0. Integration complete. Mikhail triggered the disruptor's stealth protocols, and the device went dormant. To any scanner, the secondary resonance buffer would now appear normal, while quietly corrupting harmonic patterns throughout the station's crystalline infrastructure. The Fluvian worker completed his scan, made a notation on his datapad, and departed. Mikhail waited until the footsteps faded before emerging from concealment and disconnecting his equipment. The disruptor remained, invisible and malignant, a time bomb built from mathematics. Phase 1 complete. In 18 hours, the station's harmonic systems would begin showing signs of dangerous cascade buildup. Dr. Salthara's laboratory would become the apparent source. The emergency protocols would override security restrictions, and Mikhail would have access to the Cascade drive specifications that could save human lives. Single-jump operations would eliminate the multi-stop patterns that threatened exposure through correlation analysis. He retraced his path through the maintenance crawlspace, navigating back to the biometric checkpoint. The return journey required different bypass protocols. Exit authentication, checking for unauthorized acquisitions or tampering. But the scanner recognized his cached identity patterns and cleared him without incident. 40 minutes after entering the restricted maintenance area, Mikhail emerged into the standard access corridors of Sector 7, his engineering credentials and routine presence providing camouflage. To any observer, he was Tarek Nightclaw, completing legitimate maintenance work during the night shift. The crystals around him continued their eternal song, their harmonics now carrying the seeds of carefully calculated chaos. Phase 1 complete. Returning to the upper levels, Mikhail began the more challenging task of social engineering. The night shift supervisor was a veteran lightweaver named Keftal, who'd worked his way up from cargo handling to industrial coordination through sheer competence. At 45 lightweaver years, his bioluminescent markings pulsed in measured rhythms that indicated deep thought. He represented the pragmatic middle management that kept syndicate operations profitable, applying the concordance to practical decisions. Keftal, we've got a developing situation in the crystalline matrices. Mikhail approached the supervisor's station with urgency. Harmonic cascade buildup that could affect the entire station. Keftal's bioluminescence shifted from steady blue to rapid amber pulses, a pattern indicating urgent consultation with the wavelengths. After a moment, his patterns stabilized. We perceive significant threat potential. What solutions do we have? Within manageable parameters but trending toward critical. I need authorization to monitor the source patterns. Mikhail displayed his fabricated diagnostic data. The interference is coming from the research sublevel. Keftal studied the readings, his photonic analysis centers processing data with collective precision. His bioluminescence flickered through a complex sequence, consulting light streams of experience. The patterns illuminate equipment operating beyond safety margins. We've seen this resonance signature before, preceding system failures. That's my assessment. But I need access to the sublevel monitoring systems to confirm the source and develop solutions. Dr. Salthara's section is under enhanced security protocols. The emergency technical access overrides security restrictions, Mikhail replied, quoting station regulations. Priority 1 infrastructure protection. Automated systems prioritize structural integrity over clearance protocols during cascade events. Keftal's bioluminescence pulsed through rapid decision matrix patterns, weighing caution against necessity through concordance protocols. The light streams reached consensus. We illuminate the path forward. Temporary monitoring access authorized. Direct research area entry requires Dr. Salthara's approval. Multiple wavelengths must converge for that access. It was enough. The monitoring system access would give Mikhail the information he needed to plan his penetration of the secured laboratory. Understood. I'll coordinate with the research team if direct intervention becomes necessary. Keftal's fingertips glowed as he entered authorization codes, granting Mikhail access to the sublevel monitoring networks for the next 12 hours. Navigate carefully through the darker frequencies below. Document all patterns. If critical resonance cascades manifest, we need complete spectral records for collective analysis. Of course, Mikhail made his way to the sub-level monitoring station, a cramped control room filled with displays showing the research section's vital signs. Power consumption, atmospheric conditions, security status, personnel locations. Everything he needed to understand Dr. Salthara's operational patterns. The laboratory complex was more sophisticated than his reconnaissance had suggested. 3 separate research chambers, each with independent life support and security systems. Fractal encryption on all data transfers. Biometric locks that required neural pattern matching. And at the center, a secured vault where the most sensitive data was stored on crystalline matrices that could only be accessed by Dr. Salthara herself. But every system had weaknesses, especially during emergencies. The biometric scanners could be fooled by his spoofing implants for several hours before the deception became detectable. The neural pattern locks required specific brainwave signatures, but emergency protocols simplified authentication to basic biosignatures during crisis response. The fractal encryption was unbreakable, but the crystalline storage matrices could be physically accessed when containment protocols were suspended for emergency maintenance. The challenge was timing. He needed Dr. Salthara out of the laboratory, the security systems in emergency override mode, and enough chaos to mask his penetration. All within the next few hours, before enhanced scanning protocols made his biospoofing detectable. The monitoring system chimed with an alert. The harmonic disruptor was beginning its work, introducing subtle instabilities into the station's resonance network. Nothing dangerous yet, but trending in that direction. Mikhail smiled. Phase 2 was beginning. Over the next 6 hours, he escalated the crisis. Each adjustment to the harmonic disruptor increased the cascade threat. To outside observers, it would appear that Dr. Salthara's experiments were approaching a dangerous threshold. The emergency protocols would soon demand direct intervention. Meanwhile, he used his monitoring access to study the laboratory's security systems in detail. Guard schedules, sensor networks, emergency overrides, everything he needed to plan his penetration. The neural pattern locks were the most sophisticated challenge, requiring him to reprogram his overlay system with Dr. Salthara's specific brainwave signatures. That data existed in the station's medical files, protected by standard encryption that his decryption tools could crack. By dawn, he would have everything needed to breach the laboratory's defenses. The proximity sensors showed Dr. Salthara working late again, consistent with the pattern Zara had identified. She would remain in the secured area until nearly midnight, then retire to her quarters for 6 hours of rest before beginning another obsessive day of research. The window for penetration was narrow, but sufficient. Mikhail spent those hours watching Dr. Salthara through the monitoring systems, tracking her movements through the laboratory like a hunter studying prey. She moved between workstations with obsessive focus, adjusting equations, calibrating crystals, conducting experiments that appeared on his monitors as cascading energy signatures. Each adjustment to the harmonic disruptor required careful timing. Escalate too quickly, and the station's safety systems would trigger full emergency response. Too slowly, and the window would close before Dr. Salthara left her laboratory. Around 2100 hours, she stopped at her central workstation, staring at the Cascade Drive prototype with an expression that might have been pride or exhaustion. For a moment, Mikhail felt an unwelcome kinship. 2 people dedicated to their purposes, both working late into the station's night cycle, neither realizing how their paths were about to collide. Mikhail tracked her movements through the monitoring systems like a hunter studying prey. 2110. She recalibrated the prototype's harmonic matrices. 2215. Adjustments to cascade frequency bands. 2340. She finally stepped back from the workstation, exhaustion visible in her posture. At 0147 hours, the disruptor achieved its programmed threshold. Alarms sounded throughout the station as the resonance sensors detected cascade patterns threatening structural integrity. Emergency protocols activated, overriding security restrictions to allow technical personnel access to any system necessary for crisis response. The hunt had begun. Dr. Salthara emerged from her laboratory 17 minutes later, summoned by the station administrators to explain the relationship between her experiments and the developing crisis. Mikhail watched her on the security monitors, noting the rigid control in her movements that suggested she wasn't looking forward to the meeting. Her multifaceted gaze swept the corridor with visible irritation. Perfect. With the laboratory temporarily unguarded and the emergency protocols overriding normal security, Mikhail made his move. The sublevel descended into chaos as the maintenance teams responded to the false emergency. Mikhail moved through the confusion like a predator, his Ferox behavioral programming guiding him through crisis response dynamics. Nobody questioned a systems engineer with proper credentials rushing toward the problem's apparent source. The laboratory complex lay ahead, its security systems compromised by emergency protocols and its primary guardians summoned elsewhere. Inside waited the Cascade drive specifications that could transform humanity's desperate struggle for survival into a sustainable campaign for liberation. The crystals around him hummed with artificial harmonics, their resonance patterns painting a picture of controlled crisis and manufactured opportunity. In months of friendship, Zara Brightwave hadn't suspected that her casual conversations were providing intelligence to a spy. Throughout their professional relationship, Kessa Swiftpaw hadn't doubted that Tarek Nightclaw was who he claimed to be. Their trust was about to become his weapon, their friendship his disguise. The laboratory's security door lay 20 meters ahead, its biometric scanner waiting for authentication. Mikhail approached the security door, every sense heightened. The biometric scanner pulsed with its readiness indicator, a soft blue glow that would either grant access or trigger alarms throughout the station. He pressed his hand to the scanner plate. The bio-spoofing implants activated, projecting Tarek Nightclaw's carefully crafted identity through layers of verification protocols. Skin temperature, dermal ridges, chemical markers, all synthesized in real time by technology that had cost 3 operatives their lives to develop. The scanner probed deeper. Neural pattern analysis. Mikhail felt the intrusive touch of the security system against his consciousness, searching for the telltale inconsistencies that marked artificial overlays. His implants adjusted, compensating, feeding the scanner exactly what it expected to find. Seconds stretched. The blue light flickered amber. Mikhail's hand moved toward the emergency beacon at his belt. Abort, run, survive. The light held amber, processing, analyzing, comparing biosignatures against authorized personnel databases while cross-referencing with the emergency access protocols Keftal had granted him. His heart hammered. If the scanner detected the deception now, security would lock down this entire sector within seconds. Vorgash and his team would arrive in force, weapons drawn, no questions asked until he was restrained and deep-scanned. 10 seconds, 15. The amber light shifted to green with a soft chime. Access granted. Mikhail exhaled slowly as the security door slid open, revealing Dr. Salthara's laboratory. Walls lined with resonance crystals, holographic displays showing mathematical models, and at the center, a device that could only be a prototype Cascade drive. He stepped inside, and the door sealed behind him with a pneumatic hiss that sounded too much like a trap closing. Move fast, work efficiently. The emergency protocols gave him legitimate access, but they wouldn't excuse suspicious behavior. Every movement would be recorded by the laboratory's internal sensors, every action scrutinized if anyone reviewed the logs later. The prototype was smaller than expected, no larger than a standard navigation computer, but surrounded by crystalline matrices that hummed with barely contained energy. The theoretical frameworks on the surrounding monitors showed breakthrough mathematics, resonance cascades that could extend FTL range by 40% and simultaneously reducing energy requirements. Mikhail connected his memory crystallizer to the primary data terminal, initiating what would appear to be routine diagnostic procedures. The device began copying Dr. Salthara's research files, encrypting them into formats human extraction teams could analyze. But the download would take 43 minutes, longer than his implants could maintain deception under close scrutiny. The laboratory door chimed with an incoming access request. Mikhail's heart stopped as he recognized the biometric signature, Dr. Salthara herself, responding to the emergency. He had perhaps 90 seconds before she discovered an intruder in her secured workspace. The memory crystallizer showed 12% completion, nowhere near enough for meaningful intelligence. Mikhail made a split-second decision. Humanity needed this tech, and he might not get this opportunity again. "Dr. Salthara," he said as she entered, turning with the practiced concern of a dedicated engineer. "I'm glad you're here. The crystalline matrices are showing cascade resonance that could threaten your prototype." The Memorian researcher froze, her complex visual sensors focusing on him with sharp intensity. "Who authorized access to my laboratory?" "Emergency protocols. Keftal cleared me for infrastructure assessment." Mikhail gestured to his diagnostic equipment, which connected to the laboratory's monitoring systems. "The cascade patterns are building toward a critical threshold. Your prototype could be damaged if we don't stabilize the resonance network." Dr. Salthara moved to her primary workstation with the jerky intensity that characterized her species under stress, her crystalline vision processing multiple data streams simultaneously. Her fingers danced across the interface, pulling up real-time harmonic data that confirmed Mikhail's fabricated crisis. "These readings, they suggest external interference. The mathematical beauty of the cascade patterns is being corrupted by something artificial." She spoke to the prototype crystals as if they were living entities. "Don't worry, my beauties. We'll find what's hurting you. That's my assessment. Something in the station's crystalline infrastructure is creating feedback loops. I need to understand your system's resonance parameters to design effective countermeasures." Mikhail let his voice carry the authority of professional expertise. "Without stabilization, it could damage your prototype." Dr. Salthara's expression showed alarm at the threat to her work. She began explaining the prototype's technical specifications with obsessive detail, her voice carrying the passionate intensity of someone describing her life's purpose. 23 years of research, technician. 23 years pursuing mathematical elegance that most beings can't even perceive. This prototype isn't just technology, it's the physical embodiment of harmonic theories I spent decades developing. The Cascade drive operates on harmonic principles that require precise frequency matching, she said, manipulating holographic displays to show the device's inner workings. Any external interference could disrupt the matrices and destroy years of development. Mikhail absorbed every word while his memory crystallizer continued its covert download. 28% completion. He needed to keep her talking for another 26 minutes without triggering suspicions. "The mathematics behind cascade resonance are beyond my expertise. Could you walk me through the harmonic frequency relationships?" As he spoke, Mikhail noticed the Memorian researcher tracking his equipment placement with unusual focus. For someone supposedly beyond her expertise level, his diagnostic approach seemed remarkably systematic. Dr. Salthara explained the equations that made cascade resonance possible, the matrix configurations that stored and channeled enormous energies, and the harmonic algorithms that represented breakthrough technology. Her passionate focus on the research drove her detailed explanations, while Mikhail pieced together the complete technical picture from her fragments and observations. When the memory crystallizer completed, Mikhail felt both elated and revulsed. He'd acquired the incredibly valuable intelligence by exploiting the innocence of a dedicated researcher. Dr. Salthara's trust in his expertise had provided him with information that would have taken months, if not years, of traditional espionage to obtain. The stabilization protocols should prevent further Cascade buildup, he said, disconnecting his equipment with steady hands. I'll monitor the situation from the main engineering station and alert you if the resonance patterns change. Thank you, Dr. Salthara replied, and her gratitude was genuine. Your quick thinking may have saved my life's work. She paused, looking at the prototype with protective intensity. People don't understand. This isn't just about military applications or faster ships. Cascade resonance could revolutionize medical transportation, disaster response, even cultural exchange between distant worlds. But the military funding committees only want to hear about weapons potential. Her perspective revealed bitter frustration. Peaceful applications never get the resources they deserve. Mikhail nodded and gathered his equipment, maintaining the professional demeanor that had carried him through years of deception. Just doing my job. He left the laboratory with the Cascade drive specifications secured in his memory crystallizer, and the crushing knowledge that he'd built his success upon the trust of people who deserved better. The corridor outside seemed different now, not the familiar workplace he'd known, but hollow, pale place where every face might belong to someone whose friendship he'd betrayed. Returning to his quarters, Mikhail maintained operational security despite the weight of his conscience. He nodded to colleagues who considered him a friend, exchanged casual greetings with supervisors who trusted his expertise, and smiled at people who would want him dead if they knew what he'd just stolen. By the time he reached his apartment, the harmonic Cascade crisis was beginning to stabilize, as his programming had intended. The false emergency would be resolved within hours, leaving no trace of the intervention that had made his penetration possible. Inside his quarters, Mikhail activated his encrypted burst communicator and prepared the most important transmission of his career. The Cascade drive specifications represented years of research by the syndicate's most brilliant minds, compressed into data formats that human scientists could analyze and adapt. Package acquired, he subvocalized to the subspace transmitter. Sections complete and verified. Extraction requested. He scheduled the compressed data burst for the next transmission window, knowing that Prometheus would receive the message in 18 hours. The transmission launched. Mikhail collapsed onto his bunk, staring at the ceiling while his mind raced through scenarios and consequences. The data was away. Prometheus would receive it tomorrow. And then what? Wait for extraction coordinates? Continue his cover while security tightened around him? The neural scanning would begin implementation within hours. His bio-spoofing implants might hold for a day, maybe 2 if he was lucky and avoided deep scans. After that, detection was inevitable. He tried to sleep, failed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Dr. Salthara's face as she thanked him for saving her life's work. Heard Zara's laugh when she explained some optical phenomenon with infectious enthusiasm. Remembered Kessa's protective concern when she noticed his stress markers. He'd betrayed them all. Used their trust, exploited their friendship, stolen their technology. And for what? To save humans they didn't even know existed. People trapped in draconis breeding facilities, suffering horrors that would make these syndicate researchers sick if they knew. The moral calculus was simple in theory. Thousands of human lives versus the hurt feelings of a few alien colleagues. But lying in the darkness of his quarters, with Tarek Nightclaw's memories mixing with Mikhail Okafor's guilt, the math felt a lot more complicated. He managed maybe 2 hours of fitful sleep before the morning alarm pulled him back to consciousness. The shift opened with practiced routine. Shower. Recalibrate biospoofing systems. Check Tarek Nightclaw's scent markers and pheromone production. Activate neural overlay and let the alien memories flood in. Dress in engineering coveralls. Become the lie. The corridors felt different this morning. Mikhail couldn't tell if it was paranoia or actual increased security. More Voidwalker guards at the checkpoints. Longer scan times at the biometric stations. Suspicious glances from personnel he'd known for months. Or maybe it was all in his head. Guilt making him see threats where none existed. He reached the engineering section to find Kessa already reviewing overnight reports. She looked up as he approached, and for a moment her amber eyes seemed to see right through him. Tarek, good work last night with the Cascade crisis. She handed him a datapad. Dr. Salthara sent a commendation. Said your quick thinking prevented major damage to her research. The words should have felt like vindication. Instead, they sat in his stomach like stones, just doing what needed to be done. More than that. You coordinated cross-departmental response, identified the Cascade source, and implemented stabilization protocols without waiting for authorization. Kessa's ears flicked forward with approval. That's exactly the kind of initiative we need. Especially now. The security upgrades are rolling out faster than expected. Enhanced neural scanning started this morning in the research divisions. They're finding inconsistencies. Kessa's voice dropped. 3 arrests already. People with undocumented genetic modifications, unlicensed neural implants, falsified medical records. Mikhail's blood went cold. What kind of inconsistencies? The kind that suggests someone's been lying about who they are. Kessa studied him with uncomfortable intensity. The screening will hit our department by tomorrow. Everyone gets scanned. No exceptions. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours before his neural implants and bio-spoofing systems would be exposed under deep scan analysis. The window was closing faster than he'd calculated. Tarek? Kessa's voice pulled him back. You look stressed. Everything okay? Fine. Just processing the security implications. Mikhail forced a casual tone. How long do the scans take? 20 minutes for basic screening. Longer if they detect anomalies. She paused. Is there something you need to tell me? The question hung in the air between them. This was it. The moment where he could come clean, throw himself on Kessa's mercy, hope that 2 years of loyalty might count for something. But operational security demanded silence. Earth's location couldn't be compromised. Humanity's existence couldn't be revealed. Not yet. Not like this. No, he lied. Nothing to tell. Kessa held his gaze a moment longer, then nodded. Good. Because if there was something, now would be the time. Before the scans make it impossible to volunteer information. She knew, or suspected. Either way, Mikhail's time was running out. The rest of the shift passed in mounting tension. Every comm chime made him jump. Every security guard became a potential threat. Every casual conversation felt like an interrogation. Midway through the afternoon, his encrypted communicator vibrated against his ribs. The pattern indicated incoming transmission from Prometheus. Mikhail excused himself to a maintenance closet and activated the receiver. The response arrived as neural input. Outstanding work. Data received and verified. Analysis indicates technical specifications exceed expectations. Maintain cover until extraction coordinates confirmed. Possible complications detected in your operational area. Enhanced security protocols suggest intelligence breach unrelated to your mission. Exercise extreme caution. Update follows in 12 hours. Mikhail read the message 3 times, parsing the implications. Complications. Intelligence breach unrelated to his mission. That meant someone else was operating on Harmony Station. Another intelligence service. Another infiltrator. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't the only spy on this station. And if he'd been detected, maybe they had too. Which would explain the sudden security crackdown, the enhanced neural scanning, the paranoid atmosphere that had gripped the station leadership. Someone else had screwed up. And now everyone was paying the price. Mikhail deleted the message and returned to his workstation, mind racing through possibilities. Who? What service? What mission? The competing intelligence services ran operations throughout syndicate space. So did various alliance factions. Even individual megacorps maintained corporate espionage networks. Any of them could have an agent on Harmony Station. Any of them could have triggered the security response that was about to expose him. Tarek, Zara's voice came through his comm. Can you come to my lab? I found something strange in yesterday's data. Might be related to the Cascade incident. His stomach clenched. Strange data. Related to his manufactured crisis. This could be routine analysis or the beginning of the end. On my way. Zara's laboratory looked like a war room. Holographic displays filled every available surface, showing layer upon layer of optical analysis data. Her bioluminescent freckles pulsed rapid amber, not excitement this time, but concern. Look at this. She pulled up a specific frequency analysis. These are the Cascade harmonics from yesterday's crisis. Notice anything unusual? Mikhail studied the display, his heart rate climbing as he recognized the signature of his own harmonic disruptor hidden in the noise. Complicated pattern. What am I looking for? The Cascade should have built gradually, following natural resonance curves. But this, she highlighted a specific section. This shows discrete injection points. Like someone was controlling the buildup. Shit. She'd found evidence of deliberate manipulation. Not enough to prove sabotage yet, but enough to raise questions he couldn't answer. Could be equipment cycling, Mikhail suggested. Power regulation creating artificial stepping patterns. Maybe, but her tone said she didn't believe it. Tarek, if someone deliberately created that cascade, if someone triggered the emergency to gain access to restricted areas. She trailed off, looking at him with eyes that held too much understanding. That would be bad, Mikhail finished. That would be infiltration. Corporate espionage at minimum. Maybe worse. Zara's freckles dimmed to troubled blue. I should report this to security. But if it's nothing, I'll look paranoid. If it's something, I might be exposing a colleague to false accusation. The trust again. The friendship he'd cultivated as a weapon, now being offered as a shield. She was giving him the benefit of the doubt, looking for an innocent explanation before reporting evidence that could destroy him. What do you think? She asked. Your engineering expertise. Could this be natural? Mikhail stood at a crossroads. Reinforce her doubts and buy himself time, or encourage her to report and risk exposure to clear his conscience. Natural systems can create patterns that look designed, he said slowly. But they can also hide deliberate interference. If you have concerns, you should report them. Better to investigate and find nothing than miss something critical. Zara studied him for a long moment. You're telling me to report data that could implicate you. I'm telling you to trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. She nodded slowly. I'll sleep on it. Make sure I'm not seeing patterns in noise. But Tarek, if you know something, now's the time to tell me. I know that this station has good people who care about doing the right thing, Mikhail said, including you. It wasn't an answer, but it was all he could give her. Back in his quarters that evening, Mikhail began preparing for the worst. The extraction beacon got moved from secure storage to an accessible pocket. His emergency supplies, concentrated rations, medical kit, backup communicator, went into a small pack that could pass as routine maintenance gear. The memory crystallizer with the Cascade drive specifications got encrypted with additional layers of security, and hidden in a body cavity where only medical-grade scanners could detect it. If the enhanced security scans exposed him tomorrow, he'd have perhaps 10 minutes between detection and capture. 10 minutes to activate the extraction beacon, find a defensible position, and pray that his team could reach him before Vorgash did. The odds weren't good, but they were the only odds he had. His communicator vibrated again. Not Prometheus this time. A routine message from Kessa scheduling tomorrow's shift assignments. But attached was a private note. Tarek, whatever's going on, you don't have to face it alone. Pack protects pack. Always. Mikhail stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Because the truth was, he did have to face this alone. Kessa's protection only extended to Tarek Nightclaw, and that person didn't really exist. Mikhail Okafor was on his own. Sleep didn't come easy that night. When it did, his dreams mixed human memories with Ferox hunting scenarios, until he couldn't tell which species he belonged to anymore. Morning brought new complications. The enhanced security scans had reached the engineering department. Mikhail watched from his workstation as, one by one, his colleagues were called for deep neural analysis. Most came back within 30 minutes, cleared and annoyed at the invasion of privacy. A few took longer, requiring additional verification when the scanners flagged minor inconsistencies. Old injuries, genetic quirks, undocumented medical treatments, and one didn't come back at all. That new engineer, Tam Voss, was detained, Kessa announced to the department, her voice tight with controlled anger. Security found anomalies in his neural patterns. They're investigating. Tam Voss, the quiet systems specialist who'd arrived 2 days ago. Mikhail's mind raced back over their minimal interactions, passing nods in corridors, brief greetings at shift changes, nothing substantial, and now detained for neural anomalies? By evening shift, security discovered Tam Voss's holding cell empty. Vorgash coordinated station-wide search protocols, but the infiltrator had vanished into Harmony Station's maintenance networks. Security alerts echoed through the corridors as teams swept the engineering sections, but Tam was gone, a professional who knew how to disappear. Either Tam was another infiltrator whose operation had triggered the security crackdown, or he was an innocent victim of the paranoid screening protocols. Either way, it meant the enhanced scans could detect the kind of technology Mikhail was carrying, which meant his cover would collapse the moment they called his name. Tarek Nightclaw, the security officer's voice crackled over the comm. Report to Scanning Station 7 for enhanced security screening. Time's up. Mikhail stood, feeling Kessa's eyes on him, feeling the weight of 2 years' deception reaching its inevitable conclusion. His hand brushed the extraction beacon in his pocket. Not yet. Not until he had no other choice. Good luck, Kessa said quietly. See you in 30 minutes. Mikhail nodded and headed for the scanning station, knowing that in 30 minutes, either Tarek Nightclaw would be cleared and returned to work, or Mikhail Okafor would be running for his life. The scanning station occupied a converted conference room, now filled with sophisticated neural analysis equipment that made the standard biometric scanners look like children's toys. A bored-looking Voidwalker technician gestured him toward the primary scanning chair. Routine screening, the technician said. Relax and let the system do its work. Any neural implants or genetic modifications we should know about? Standard Ferox longevity treatments, Mikhail replied, using the cover story his training had prepared. Documented in my medical file. We'll verify that. The technician activated the scanner. Mikhail felt the intrusive probe of deep neural analysis, far more sophisticated than anything he'd encountered before. The scanner mapped his brainwave patterns with terrifying precision, comparing them against species baselines and searching for the telltale harmonics that marked artificial overlays. His implants compensated, adjusting their output to match expected parameters. But the scanner was adapting too, probing deeper, looking for inconsistencies that couldn't be explained by normal variation. 30 seconds. The technician frowned at his display. 60 seconds. Interesting. Your neural architecture shows some unusual features. Running deeper analysis. 90 seconds. Mikhail's hand moved fractionally toward his pocket, toward the beacon that would end 2 years of cover and possibly his life. Scan complete. The technician looked up. You're cleared. Some interesting harmonics in your medial prefrontal cortex, but within normal ranges for Ferox neural plasticity, probably from your engineering work with crystalline matrices. The lie held. The sophisticated technology human engineers had developed specifically for deep cover operations had withstood the most advanced scanning protocols the Stellar Syndicate could employ. Mikhail exhaled slowly and stood. Glad to hear it. Can I return to my shift? Yes. But, the technician paused. If you experience any unusual neural symptoms, headaches, memory gaps, perception anomalies, report them immediately. The crystalline matrix exposure could be affecting your neural patterns more than we'd normally expect. Understood. Thank you. Mikhail walked out of the scanning station on legs that felt like water, past security checkpoints that suddenly seemed less threatening, back toward the engineering section where Kessa would be waiting. He'd survived. The implants had held. The cover remained intact. But as he passed a viewport showing the vast crystalline mining complex that powered Harmony Station, Mikhail couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just used up the last of his luck. And somewhere on this station, another infiltrator, Tam Voss, was probably learning exactly what happened when luck ran out. The alarms began at 0647 hours, an unfamiliar pattern of emergency tones. Not the measured tones of routine emergencies, or the sharp bursts of equipment failures, but a deep, resonant wailing that emerged from the station's crystalline core itself. The sound carried subsonic frequencies that made his bones ache, while the emergency lighting cast harsh red shadows that transformed familiar corridors into alien landscapes. Through his quarter's viewport, the emergency lighting cast shadows across the mining complex from which Harmony Station drew its wealth. His communicator erupted with overlapping emergency broadcasts. All personnel to emergency stations. Structural collapse in Deep Shaft Omega. Multiple casualties confirmed. All available medical and engineering personnel report. This wasn't part of his plan. The deep mining operations had been showing stress indicators for weeks, subtle harmonic irregularities in the crystal matrices unrelated to his sabotage equipment. Microfractures in the support structures that maintenance had noted but deemed non-critical. The accident was a genuine disaster that had developed independently of his mission, but one that his training told him could provide the perfect cover if properly exploited. Mikhail dressed mechanically while racing through the implications. Deep Shaft Omega was the station's primary extraction site, where nearly 300 workers operated in shifts around the clock. A structural collapse there would mean hundreds of casualties, overwhelming the station's emergency response capabilities. It would also trigger security protocols that could either help or destroy his extraction plan. The corridor outside his quarters was chaos. Workers rushing toward emergency stations, their footsteps echoing off the metal decking in staccato rhythms of urgency. Medical personnel hurried past with portable equipment, the bitter smell of sterilization fields mixing with the metallic tang of emergency atmosphere scrubbers working overtime. Security teams tried to coordinate response efforts over communication channels crackling with static and overlapping transmissions. Mikhail joined the flow, his engineering credentials routing him toward the crisis zone. Tarek, Kessa's voice cut through the noise. He found her at the emergency coordination station, her lupine features etched with desperation. Beside her, a nervous Fluvian in a risk assessment uniform was rapidly calculating on a data tablet. The deep shaft's primary supports have collapsed. We've got nearly 200 workers trapped in the lower levels. Probability of successful rescue using conventional methods, 23.7%. The Fluvian interjected with clipped efficiency. Resource expenditure versus likely casualty numbers suggests 67.3% chance of cost-ineffective operation. Recommend immediate consultation with insurance adjusters before committing additional personnel to potentially fatal rescue attempts. Kessa's ears flattened. Grix, these are packmates down there, not spreadsheet entries. Sentiment versus economics, Engineer Swiftpaw. Emotional decisions lead to compound losses. Grix's gill slits fluttered as he processed more calculations. Current rescue costs, 2.3 million credits per hour. Projected duration, 72 to 96 hours minimum. Risk multiplier for additional casualties, 1.4 per hour of operation. Cause? Mikhail asked, interrupting the efficiency analysis. Unknown. The resonance matrices were stable at the last check, but something triggered a cascade failure in the structural crystals. Could be accumulated stress from the deep extraction cycles. We've been pushing the mining quotas hard this quarter. Kessa's expression showed the analytical focus that made her an effective leader. We need every systems engineer available for rescue coordination. Mikhail studied the holographic display showing Deep Shaft Omega's cross-section. The collapse had occurred in 3 stages, trapping workers in multiple sections with no clear path to the surface. Traditional rescue equipment would require days to penetrate the debris, and the trapped workers didn't have days. What about unconventional approaches? He asked. The matrices that caused this collapse, could we use them for rescue operations? How? Controlled resonance to create new pathways through the crystal formations. Dangerous, but potentially faster than mechanical excavation. Mikhail was thinking out loud, applying unconventional problem-solving approaches to the crisis. We'd need precise harmonic control and someone who understands crystal matrix behavior. Kessa's eyes brightened with interest, her ears swiveling forward as she caught the scent of a potential solution. Dr. Salthara. She knows more Etwas crystal harmonics than anyone on the station. Her expertise in that territory is unmatched. Perfect. Could you get her clearance for emergency consultation? Already done. Emergency protocols override security restrictions for crisis response. Kessa activated her communicator, her posture shifting to alert pack leader stance. Dr. Salthara, emergency consultation required in Deep Shaft Omega. Pack members are trapped. Your expertise in crystal resonance may be our only option for rapid rescue. The following hour was a blurred nightmare of desperate improvisation. Mikhail found himself working alongside Zara Brightwave, whose optical analysis equipment could map the crystalline structures blocking access to the trapped workers. Her expertise complemented his theoretical knowledge, creating solutions that neither could have developed alone. The optical refraction patterns show voids here and here, Zara said, highlighting sections of the holographic map while her bioluminescent freckles pulsed in complex analytical patterns. Streams of golden light cascading down her cheeks as she processed multiple data sets simultaneously. If we could create resonance pathways connecting these spaces, we'd need precise frequency control, Mikhail replied. Too much energy and we destabilize the entire formation. Too little and we don't penetrate the barrier crystals. Dr. Salthara arrived with the manic intensity that characterized her species under pressure, already analyzing multiple probability matrices for the proposed rescue operation. Controlled crystal resonance for excavation purposes? Theoretically possible, but enormously dangerous. The harmonic calculations alone would require... She paused, her research obsession temporarily overriding the emergency situation. This is fascinating. Using Cascade principles for precision matter displacement rather than FTL transit, the mathematical elegance is remarkable. We'll calculate as we go, Mikhail interrupted. People are dying down there while we discuss theory. The Memorian researchers' complex visual sensors fixed on him with unwavering focus. You understand the risks. If we miscalculate the resonance frequencies, we could bring down the entire shaft structure. If we don't try, everyone trapped down there dies anyway. Mikhail met her stare without flinching. What do we need? For the next 4 hours, Mikhail coordinated the most dangerous rescue operation in his career, either as himself or as Tarek Nightclaw. Dr. Salthara's theoretical expertise, combined with Zara's optical analysis and his own systems integration skills, created a makeshift solution that violated every safety protocol in the Syndicate manual. They used the station's crystalline resonance generators to create harmonic pathways through solid crystal, opening rescue tunnels that should have taken weeks to excavate. It was brilliant and successful beyond anyone's expectations. Within 6 hours, they had extracted 83 trapped workers from sections that conventional equipment couldn't have reached for days. Grix appeared at Mikhail's shoulder as the final rescue group emerged. Remarkable cost-benefit ratio. Original projection, 23.7% success rate. Actual outcome, 68.9% survival rate. Operation efficiency exceeded baseline estimates by 294%. His gill slits fluttered with what might have been excitement. Recommend immediate analysis for standardization protocols. Technique could reduce future rescue costs by 67–89%, depending on casualty variables. But 37 workers died in the lower levels before rescue could arrive. 37 beings with families, ambitions, and futures that ended in darkness and crushing debris. You saved most of them, Zara said, standing beside him as the medical teams triaged the rescued workers. Her bioluminescent freckles flickered with exhaustion and relief. Without your unconventional thinking, we would have lost everyone. Mikhail stared at the casualty reports, feeling every death. The rescue operation had been successful by any reasonable measure, but success rang hollow when measured against the lives that could have been saved with better preparation, faster response, or different decisions. 37 people are dead, he said, and 83 are alive because of what we did. Zara's voice carried the conviction of someone who had seen true heroism. You can't save everyone, Tarek. We saved who we could. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they highlighted the fundamental contradiction in his situation. He was saving people as Tarek Nightclaw while betraying their trust as Mikhail Okafor. When they discovered humanity's deception, and they would, how would it affect their willingness to trust his species when humans eventually revealed themselves? The crystal resonance techniques we developed, Dr. Salthara said, approaching with her usual intensity slightly muted by exhaustion, but her geometric features animated with research excitement. They represent an interesting direction in harmonic manipulation theory. With refinement, this approach could revolutionize crystal matrix engineering. She looked back toward the collapsed mining area with satisfaction. 17 years I've been arguing that Cascade technology has humanitarian applications beyond military transport. Today, we proved it. These people are alive because mathematics saved them and provide humanitarian cover for intelligence extraction. The rescue operation had given Mikhail extensive access to restricted systems, advanced research data, and the complete trust of the people whose friendship he had betrayed. Dr. Salthara had personally authorized his access to crystalline resonance controls that were normally classified beyond his clearance level. Could we document the techniques for future emergency response? Mikhail asked. The harmonic calculations might be useful for other crisis situations. Excellent idea. I'll prepare a complete technical analysis for the station's emergency protocols database. Dr. Salthara's expression showed clear approval. Your practical approach to theoretical problems is unusual. The observation was dangerously perceptive, but Mikhail deflected it with practiced ease. Crisis situations require unconventional thinking. Survival trumps protocol. Indeed, perhaps you'd consider transferring to the research division. Your analytical capabilities would be valuable for advanced crystal matrix projects. The offer was sincere and represented everything Mikhail had worked toward. Direct access to the station's advanced research, personal mentorship from its premier scientist, and integration into projects that would provide intelligence beyond his current mission parameters. It was also the ultimate validation that Tarek Nightclaw had become indistinguishable from his cover identity. "I'm honored by the offer," Mikhail replied, "but I think I'm more useful in systems engineering, a bridge between theory and practical application." Dr. Salthara nodded approvingly. "Wise perspective. Theoretical advancement requires practical validation." She paused, studying his expression with keen assessment. "Are you familiar with Cascade resonance theory? Your harmonic calculations today suggest deeper understanding than typical engineering training provides." "Careful. Self-study mostly. Crystal physics fascinates me, but I lack the mathematical background for serious research. Mathematics can be learned. Intuitive understanding of crystalline harmonics is far rarer." Dr. Salthara's voice carried the enthusiasm of a researcher discovering promising talent, her crystalline body structure pulsing with rainbow light patterns as she considered new possibilities. "If you're interested, I could provide access to theoretical frameworks that might enhance your engineering capabilities. I have research that needs practical validation, someone who can bridge theory and application." She paused, her expression showing the excitement of potential collaboration. "My late colleague Dr. Morthek said breakthrough discoveries needed engineers who could see mathematical beauty in practical solutions." The temptation was overwhelming. Access to Dr. Salthara's complete research library would provide intelligence that could accelerate human technology development by decades. But it would also require deeper infiltration of her inner circle and significantly greater risk of exposure. But with the upgraded security, he could never take her up on the offer. "That's generous," Mikhail said. "But right now, I think I need to focus on infrastructure assessment. Today's collapse might have damaged systems throughout the station. Of course, practical concerns must take priority." Dr. Salthara's approval was tinged with disappointment. "The offer remains open when circumstances permit." As the immediate crisis wound down, Mikhail found himself coordinating with Keftal on post-disaster security measures. The industrial coordinator was struggling to balance emergency response with the enhanced security protocols that had been implemented the previous day. "The security scanning disrupts our rescue coordination wavelengths," Keftal explained, his bioluminescence cycling through stressed amber-red patterns. "Our people are delayed at checkpoints when they should be flowing toward emergency responses. The light streams show inefficient convergence patterns. My alliance training emphasized rapid emergency response. Sometimes syndicate protocols prioritize caution over speed." "Can we suspend the enhanced protocols temporarily?" Mikhail asked. "Not without illumination from the station administration wavelengths. And their light streams are all focused on damage control and casualty analysis." Keftal's bioluminescence dimmed to frustrated orange patterns. "We need someone with technical authority to assess whether our infrastructure frequencies are stable enough to resume normal security operations. The concordance requires clarity before consensus can emerge." The infrastructure assessment would give Mikhail legitimate access to systems throughout the station, including areas that had been restricted before the crisis. Emergency protocols overrode normal clearance requirements, and his demonstrated expertise during the rescue operation had established his credibility with the station leadership. "I can run comprehensive stability diagnostics," Mikhail offered. "Check for cascade damage in the matrices, structural stress in the crystal networks, potential failure points that might pose future risks." How long would that take? 12 to 18 hours for a complete assessment. Depends on what we find. Mikhail was calculating the time he needed for final preparation and extraction coordination. I'll prioritize the critical systems first, then work through the secondary networks. Keftal's patterns brightened to relieved blue-white as he authorized the assessment. Take whatever access the light streams illuminate. After today's resonance disaster, we must identify potential failure frequencies before they cascade into emergencies. The concordance demands anticipation over reaction. The authorization gave Mikhail complete freedom of movement throughout Harmony Station. For the next 18 hours, he could access any system on the station with legitimate justification. It was also his last chance to extract safely. The enhanced security protocols would resume once the crisis passed, and his implants were approaching the limits of their effectiveness. His extraction window was closing rapidly, measured now in hours rather than days. That evening, as the station struggled to process the day's tragedy and coordinate recovery efforts, Mikhail began his final preparations. The memory crystallizer contained not just the Cascade drive specifications, but complete documentation of the rescue techniques that had saved 83 lives. Human engineers could adapt both technologies, advancing FTL capabilities while developing new approaches to emergency response. He also sent a carefully coded message through a maintenance data stream, a signal that would be relayed through multiple automated systems before reaching his extraction team. The extraction team had been holding at the system's edge for the past week, pre-positioned close enough to respond within hours if needed. The message was simple. Emergency extraction may be required within 48 hours. If everything went according to plan, the coded warning would bring the ship into immediate response range. A priority message arrived on his personal communicator, Zara requesting a meeting. He found her in the memorial garden where survivors and families gathered to process the day's trauma. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," she said, her voice subdued, "about the unauthorized Cascade experiments. After today's rescue operation, I realized something troubling. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to concerned blue. The mathematical signatures I detected, they match elements of the rescue technology Dr. Salthara used. Too closely to be coincidental." Mikhail kept his expression neutral. "What are you suggesting?" "Someone had advanced knowledge of Cascade applications that shouldn't exist yet. Someone prepared for the kind of precision manipulation we needed today." Zara's luminescent eyes focused on him with uncomfortable intensity. "The timing is too perfect, Tarek. The interference appears, then disappears. Then we suddenly have breakthrough rescue capabilities." His cover was deteriorating faster than expected. Zara's analytical mind was connecting patterns he'd thought were safely separated. "Maybe the crisis forced creative solutions," he offered. "Emergency situations can drive innovation beyond normal limits." "Maybe," but her tone suggested she wasn't convinced. "I'm scheduling enhanced analysis for tomorrow. If someone is conducting unauthorized research, we'll find the evidence." As he prepared for what might be his final night as Tarek Nightclaw, Mikhail found himself wondering which version of his identity would survive the extraction. The operative who had volunteered for this mission, or the Ferox engineer who had discovered that some victories were indistinguishable from defeats. The corridor outside his quarters showed normal end-of-shift activity. Maintenance crews cycled through the security checkpoints, their movements tracked by protocols that made everyone's routine feel oppressive. The station's heightened security remained visible in every checkpoint scan, every extra patrol passing through the corridors. Tam Voss remained at large, somewhere in the station's maze of maintenance tunnels, another shadow in a facility growing thick with secrets. Outside his quarters, Harmony Station continued its vigil for the dead and its celebration of the living. Medical teams tended to the rescued workers. Families mourned those who hadn't survived. and engineers worked through the night to prevent future disasters. They were good people, dedicated to their work and their communities, deserving of honesty and loyalty. The extraction beacon waited in its hidden compartment. In the station's depths, the crystalline matrices hummed with the harmonics of controlled energy and careful manipulation. Soon, those same crystals would power human ships across impossible distances, extending Earth's reach and multiplying humanity's capabilities. The memorial service was held in Harmony Station's central assembly area, where the crystalline formations created natural acoustics that carried voices throughout the gathered crowd. The vast chamber hummed with the subdued harmonics of grieving, breathing patterns, heartbeats, and soft movement creating a living symphony of loss. Mikhail stood among his colleagues as Keftal read the names of the 37 workers who had died in Deep Shaft Omega. His bioluminescence dimmed to respectful violet patterns, while light streams from other lightweavers pulsed in synchronized memorial rhythms. Velandra Swiftcurrent, shift supervisor, survived by 3 offspring and pack-bonded mate. Kessa's ears flattened slightly. Velandra had been her mentor when she first arrived on Harmony Station. Zixtal, maintenance specialist, survived by elderly clutch siblings on Mining Station 7. Therak Ironwill, excavation engineer, survived by pack siblings on the Prowler homeworld. Mikhail noticed several Ferox workers in the crowd touching their clan markings in the traditional gesture of respect for fallen packmates. Their body language spoke of genuine grief. These weren't just colleagues, but extended family bound by territorial loyalty. Each name was a life cut short, a family devastated, a future erased. The operative felt their deaths weighing on him, made worse by the knowledge that his successful mission would inevitably lead to more casualties when human forces used the stolen technology against syndicate targets. Beside him, Zara wiped tears from her luminescent eyes. The soft blue glow of her freckles dimmed with grief. Since the collapse, she had thrown herself into survivor support efforts with the dedication that characterized her approach to everything. Her optical analysis had been crucial to the rescue operation, but she focused on the lives saved rather than the lives lost. "They died helping others," she whispered to Mikhail as the service continued, her voice barely audible over the harmonics that carried every word and emotion to the chamber's corners. "That has to mean something." Mikhail nodded but found no words that weren't contaminated by deceit. After the service, he found himself in Kessa's office for routine post-crisis debriefing. "You've been quiet since the rescue operation," Kessa observed, her amber eyes studying his expression with practiced concern. "Having trouble processing the casualties?" 37 deaths is hard to process," Mikhail replied, which was truthful. "But 83 survivors wouldn't exist without your intervention. That's the pack calculation that matters. Lives saved weigh heavier than lives lost." Kessa leaned back in her chair, her scarred muzzle showing the controlled satisfaction of a successful hunt. "I've been reviewing your performance over the past 2 years. Your analytical capabilities, technical expertise, leadership under pressure. It's exceptional. You show Kolthara, the wisdom that comes from understanding both hunt and territory. You track problems to their source and strike with precision." "Just doing my job?" "No, it's more than that. Your approach to problems is unconventional, like a hunter who reads scent trails others can't detect. Your solutions work because you track problems to their source with methodical precision. Like yesterday's rescue operation, using resonance for excavation should have been impossible, but you made it work because you saw patterns others missed." Kessa was building toward something significant, possibly dangerous. "What are you suggesting?" "Promotion. A department leadership position. You've proven yourself capable of coordinating complex technical operations under extreme pressure." Kessa's voice carried genuine enthusiasm. Her ears perked forward in excitement. "With your capabilities and my recommendation, you could be running your own engineering section within 6 months, building your own pack, choosing your own territory to defend. The offer was everything Tarek Nightclaw had supposedly worked toward: professional advancement, increased responsibility, integration into the station's leadership structure. It was also the ultimate validation that his cover identity had become indistinguishable from reality. Through careful deception, he had earned authentic respect and trust from people whose friendship he valued. "I'm honored," Mikhail said, "but I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of responsibility." "Nonsense. You coordinated yesterday's rescue better than most senior engineers could have managed. Your team coordination, technical problem-solving, decision-making under pressure, all exceptional." Kessa paused, studying his reaction. "Unless there's something else holding you back?" "Just concerned about taking on more than I can handle effectively." That's the kind of humility that makes good leaders. Velketh Nara, strength through acknowledgement of limits. Kessa's approval carried the warmth of pack loyalty. "Think about it. The position would be open within the next month, and I can't think of anyone better qualified." A month. Mikhail would be either dead or light years away within the next 24 hours, back on Earth or another human colony. The position Kessa was offering would go to someone else, someone who belonged in this community and deserved the trust she was prepared to invest. "I'll consider it," he lied. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Dr. Salthara. "Emergency consultation required in Laboratory Complex 3. Cascade resonance detected in prototype systems. Your expertise needed." Mikhail's heart stopped. Cascade resonance in the prototype meant either accidental activation or deliberate testing of the Cascade drive system. Either possibility represented enormous intelligence value and enormous risk. "Go," Kessa said, noting his expression. "Dr. Salthara doesn't call for emergency consultation unless it's critical." The laboratory complex was sealed under enhanced security protocols when Mikhail arrived, with biometric scanners operating at maximum sensitivity and neural pattern analysis required for all access. His biospoofing implants managed the initial screening, but the systems were probing deeper than they had before. The enhanced security measures were approaching the threshold where his technological deception would become detectable. A warning chime sounded as the scanner flagged a minor anomaly in his neural patterns: residual harmonics from prolonged exposure to the crystalline matrices during the rescue operation. The security guard's hand moved toward his weapon. "It's fine," Dr. Salthara said, appearing at the checkpoint. "Technician Nightclaw has been working with Cascade resonance for the past 30 hours. The neural residue is expected." She waved dismissively at the guard. "I personally vouch for him." The guard hesitated, then nodded and reset the scanner. Mikhail exhaled slowly as Dr. Salthara met him at the inner security checkpoint, her multifaceted eyes showing stress patterns that suggested she was dealing with a crisis beyond her normal parameters. She was clutching a data tablet like a shield, her fingers stained with the blue residue that indicated she'd been working directly with crystalline matrices, something she only did when theoretical approaches failed to solve immediate problems. "The prototype is experiencing uncontrolled cascade resonance," she said without preamble. "The crystalline matrices are generating harmonic patterns I don't understand, and the energy levels are approaching dangerous thresholds." Mikhail followed her into the laboratory, where the holographic displays showed the Cascade drive prototype surrounded by increasingly complex energy signatures. The harmonic patterns were far more sophisticated than anything in Dr. Salthara's theoretical models. "When did this begin?" Mikhail asked, connecting his diagnostic equipment to the monitoring systems. 18 hours ago, approximately 4 hours after we completed the rescue operation. The timeline suggests some kind of resonance feedback from the crystalline manipulation we used for excavation. Dr. Salthara manipulated the holographic displays with practiced precision, processing multiple data streams with mathematical precision. "The patterns are too complex for simple feedback," The signature is too elegant. Natural chaos doesn't create such beautiful interference patterns. This looks almost intentional. Her voice carried the mixture of scientific curiosity and protective anger that characterized her response to anything threatening her research. She glanced at Mikhail with sharp, analytical focus. You know, for a systems engineer, your theoretical grasp of Cascade harmonics is remarkably sophisticated. Most maintenance personnel wouldn't recognize the mathematical elegance I'm describing, because it is. Mikhail realized what he was seeing. His harmonic disruptor, connected to the station's crystalline network, had triggered sympathetic resonance in the Cascade drive prototype. The device designed to create false emergencies was now causing real ones. The resonance patterns suggest external control, he said. Something in the station's crystalline infrastructure might be sending command signals to your prototype. External control by what? Unknown. But if we can trace the signal source, we might be able to isolate the prototype and prevent Cascade failure. Mikhail was already planning how to retrieve his harmonic disruptor while appearing to investigate the crisis it had caused. For the next 3 hours, he worked alongside Dr. Salthara to analyze the false signals his own equipment was generating. Helping her solve a problem he had created provided complete access to the prototype's operational parameters. When they traced the interference to a maintenance access panel, Mikhail volunteered to perform the delicate extraction, while Dr. Salthara monitored the resonance patterns from the lab. Alone in the cramped access tunnel, he quickly disconnected and pocketed the harmonic disruptor, then spent several minutes creating the appearance of complex technical work before reporting success. By the time they completed the investigation, he had acquired detailed information about the Cascade drive's performance capabilities. But as they concluded the diagnostic session, Dr. Salthara presented him with an unexpected opportunity. "Your technical insights have been remarkable," she said, reviewing the data from their investigation. "I'm authorized to offer you a position on my research team. Full access to Cascade theory, participation in breakthrough experiments, and the chance to help develop technology that could revolutionize interstellar civilization." The offer was everything Tarek Nightclaw could have hoped for: recognition, meaningful work, and legitimate access to the technology Mikhail needed to steal for humanity. It represented a future where his infiltration could become a genuine career, where the relationships he'd built could continue without deception. "I need time to consider the implications," he said. Of course, such decisions shouldn't be rushed. Dr. Salthara's geometric features showed pleased satisfaction. "Take whatever time you need. The work we're doing here will reshape how civilizations interact across galactic distances. Having engineers who understand both theoretical mathematics and practical application is essential for further development." As she left the laboratory, Mikhail remained behind, surrounded by the technology that could advance human capabilities by decades. But accepting her offer would mean becoming what his cover identity claimed to be, abandoning his people to build a life among those he'd been sent to betray. The prototype was more advanced than the theoretical specifications suggested. Real-world testing had achieved 22 light-year range with only 16-hour recharge cycles, nearly double the performance of standard Syndicate FTL drives. In human hands, adapted to their more compact ship designs and more limited power generation systems, this technology could provide tactical ranges of 12 to 15 light-years, double humanity's current capability. But the sabotage device wasn't the only problem. As Mikhail helped Dr. Salthara disconnect his equipment, additional alarms began sounding. "The failures are cascading," Dr. Salthara said, her multifaceted eyes tracking multiple displays. "Removing the interference source should have stabilized everything, but we're seeing harmonic resonance building in sequence through the crystalline matrices." Mikhail studied the readings, his stomach sinking as he recognized the pattern. A chain reaction. Each matrix failure triggers resonance in the next level, creating higher-order harmonics that destabilize the entire station. Theoretically impossible, Dr. Salthara muttered, but her tone suggested she was reconsidering. Not impossible, just improbable. Mikhail grabbed a portable resonance dampener from the equipment rack. Sometimes brute force works when elegant mathematics fails. Pure instinct over calculation. Instinct-driven intervention. We placed dampening fields at key resonance nodes to break the harmonic chain. Mikhail was already moving toward the first critical junction. Not elegant, but effective. For the next hour, they worked together, placing dampeners throughout the station's crystalline infrastructure. Mikhail's approach was brutally pragmatic. Identify the resonance source, slap a dampener on it, move to the next problem. Dr. Salthara provided the theoretical framework, while he supplied the practical implementation. Your understanding of crystalline harmonics is remarkable for a systems engineer, Dr. Salthara said as they installed the seventh dampener. Where did you learn Cascade theory? Mikhail hesitated, aware his answer would invite more scrutiny. Self-study. The mathematics fascinate me. This level of expertise suggests formal training in advanced physics. Your solution approaches are too sophisticated for casual learning. Dr. Salthara's voice carried genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. As they finished placing the final dampener, Mikhail's communicator chimed with an urgent message from Kessa. Tarek, security's tracking anomalies in your background data. We need to talk. Where are you? Mikhail muted the communicator. I'll deal with that later. The crisis was stabilizing, but Mikhail knew Kessa's suspicions were growing. Her message had been clear. She was putting the pieces together. The laboratory door chimed as someone entered the security codes. Dr. Salthara's crystalline features showed alarm. Dr. Salthara looked up from her displays. I didn't authorize anyone else. The door slid open to reveal Tam Voss, weapon drawn and aimed with professional precision. Everything about his posture had changed. Gone was the nervous maintenance worker. In his place stood someone with predatory confidence, cold calculation evident in his stance. The escaped infiltrator had found his moment. The weapon looked military-grade. Both of you, step away from the equipment, Tam said, weapon steady. Now. Mikhail's training kicked in. Assess, analyze, react. Tam's transformation was too complete, too professional. This wasn't a worker having a breakdown. This was someone dropping a cover identity. Tam? Dr. Salthara said, confusion evident in her voice. What's happening? Not Tam. Never was Tam. The infiltrator's eyes fixed on Mikhail, studying his micro-expressions. And you're not Tarek either. The way you move, the hesitations when accessing implanted memories, I've been watching for weeks. Takes one to know one. Mikhail felt ice form in his chest, another infiltrator. Someone who'd been watching, analyzing, waiting for the right moment. I don't know what you mean, Mikhail said, but his hand edged toward the concealed blade at his belt. I've been watching since I arrived. Every shift, every anomaly. Someone's been accessing systems during off shifts, creating resonance signatures too sophisticated for a real maintenance engineer. Tam's smile was cold and professional, his modified facial muscles not quite matching natural Ferek's expressions. Mikhail's mind raced through possibilities. Rival intelligence agent? Or something worse? The Cascade drive specifications, Tam continued, his eyes never leaving Mikhail. You've been feeding data to unknown intelligence networks. Clever, thorough, but not as subtle as you thought. Shit. Mikhail's cover was blown, but he had operational objectives. What do you want? To buy time, Tam's expression shifted to something more dangerous. You've transmitted the specifications, yes, but I can limit the damage. Destroy the prototype, so no one can verify the theory's work. Kill Dr. Salthara so she can't help your engineers build it. Make sure your stolen data dies as untestable theory, and you die with it. Hegemony damage control. Dr. Salthara stepped back, her multifaceted eyes showing growing alarm. Destroy my work? 23 years of research, already in the wrong hands, Tam finished. Mikhail made his decision. Whatever Tam represented, rival syndicate corporation, competing faction, or rogue intelligence network, he couldn't let 23 years of groundbreaking research be destroyed. Before he could respond, the laboratory's internal communication panel erupted with Kessa's voice. Security to Research Lab 7. Unauthorized access attempt detected in Dr. Salthara's lab. For a split second, Tam's eyes flicked toward the speaker. Mikhail moved. He lunged forward, blade flashing toward Tam's weapon arm. Tam twisted, enhanced reflexes turning what should have been a killing strike into a vicious slash across his forearm. His weapon clattered to the floor as blood welled from the cut. But Tam was already recovering. His uninjured arm caught Mikhail's wrist, twisting with augmented strength that sent the blade spinning away. A brutal strike to Mikhail's ribs drove the air from his lungs. They crashed into a bank of monitoring equipment, alarms blaring as the crystalline matrices sparked and failed. Mikhail fought with desperation and training, but Tam was stronger, faster, enhanced in ways that suggested military-grade augmentation. Each hit landed with bone-crushing force. Tam's fist connected with Mikhail's jaw, snapping his head back. Another strike to the kidney. Mikhail's vision blurred as he tried to defend against blows he couldn't match. Tam's injured arm hampered him, but not enough. He was systematically taking Mikhail apart. Mikhail hit the floor hard, tasting blood. Tam stood over him, reaching for the fallen weapon with his good hand. This was it. It would be over soon. The laboratory door burst open. Vorgash and 6 officers poured through, weapons drawn, professional competence evident in their tactical positioning. "Freeze!" Vorgash barked, weapon aimed at Tam's center mass. Tam spun toward the security team, weapon coming up. Mikhail saw it happening in slow motion. Tam's finger tightening on the trigger, the barrel swinging toward the clustered officers, death about to erupt in the confined space. Mikhail threw himself forward, despite the agony in his ribs, despite the blood in his mouth, despite knowing he wouldn't be fast enough. His shoulder crashed into Tam's legs as the weapon discharged. The energy bolt meant for Vorgash's head scorched across Mikhail's shoulder instead, burning through flesh and muscle with white-hot pain. Tam went down hard, the weapon skittering away. Security officers swarmed him, magnetic restraints locking around his wrists with authoritative clicks. Vorgash stood over both infiltrators, weapon tracking between them, his expression unreadable. "2 infiltrators confirmed," Vorgash barked into his communicator. "Research section secure." Mikhail lay on the floor, shoulder burning, ribs screaming, tasting blood and failure. Through the pain, he met Vorgash's eyes and saw something shift in the security chief's expression. Not trust, not yet, but calculation. Recognition of an action that didn't fit the profile of a ruthless spy. In the security holding area, Mikhail sat with his hands restrained, processing the failure of his mission and the revelation of Tam Voss's true identity. But his analysis was interrupted by proximity alarms throughout the station. Overhead, the station's communication system activated with a priority announcement. "All personnel to emergency stations. Hostile ships detected at the system perimeter." This is not a drill. Mikhail felt ice form in his stomach as he recognized the implications. The real enemy had arrived. "Multiple vessels approaching," Vorgash's voice crackled through the communication system. "Configuration unknown. Weapons hot." Through the small viewport, Mikhail could see running lights in the distance, ships moving in coordinated formation. His blood ran cold as he recognized an attack pattern. "Hostile force," he said, Likely the faction Tam works for. Vorgash appeared at the holding cell door. What did you say? Those ships. Professional assault formation. Likely the same intelligence network Tam Voss was working for. They're here for the Cascade drive research. Mikhail met the security chief's gaze steadily. Everyone on this station is about to die unless we do something. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I'm not your enemy. They are. Mikhail gestured toward the approaching ships. They don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They steal what they want and kill everyone who knows about it. Weapons fire erupted outside as the station's defensive systems engaged the attacking ships. Energy beams crossed space in deadly patterns while proximity alarms screened throughout Harmony Station. Multiple bogies confirmed hostile, came the report over the communication system. They're targeting the research sections specifically. This is a precision strike. Vorgash studied Mikhail for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. Then his gaze shifted to the burnt flesh on Mikhail's shoulder, the wound he'd taken saving Vorgash's officers from Tam's weapon fire. You stopped him from killing my people, Vorgash said slowly. You could have used the distraction to escape. Instead, you took a hit meant for them. They're good people, Mikhail said simply. They didn't deserve to die because two spies were fighting in a laboratory. You saved my officers when you could have run, Vorgash continued, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. That's not the action of someone who sees us as enemies. That's someone who values life. All life. Mikhail nodded, knowing his cover was blown. The performance was over. Whatever came next, at least he wouldn't be lying anymore. Release my restraints. Get me to Dr. Salthara. And pray my extraction team is close enough to help. Mikhail's training was already analyzing the tactical situation. The hegemony will breach the hull within minutes. We need to evacuate the research data and get civilians to safety. The security chief hesitated briefly, then activated the restraint release. You run, and I'll hunt you across the galaxy. I'm not running. They ran through corridors filled with emergency lighting and blaring alarms. Vorgash had left Tam Voss secured in a reinforced holding cell. The second infiltrator would have to wait for later interrogation, assuming any of them survived. Mikhail reached Laboratory Complex 3 ahead of Vorgash, who'd stopped to coordinate the security teams. He found her, frantically downloading research data onto portable storage devices. Her multifaceted eyes showed controlled panic as she tried to save 23 years of work. Dr. Salthara, Mikhail said, we need to evacuate. Now. Vorgash arrived, breathing hard. Dr. Salthara, this is Mikhail Okafor. That's his real name. I know it's a lot right now. The security chief's voice carried grudging acknowledgement. He's helping us. He saved my officers when he could have escaped. Dr. Salthara looked up from her frantic data transfer, her crystalline features shifting through visible confusion as she processed the revelation. You're free? But you were. Her gaze darted between Mikhail and Vorgash. I don't understand. He took a weapon blast protecting my people, Vorgash said, his tone matter-of-fact. Whatever his mission was, I'd say it's safe to assume he's not here to hurt us. At least, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and he claims he can help. We can figure the rest out later. I can't leave my research. If they destroy the laboratory, if you stay, they'll capture you and force you to rebuild it for them. Is that what you want? Explosions rocked the station as the hegemony forces began their assault. Through the viewports, they could see pods launching toward the station's outer hull. They're breaching! Vorgash's voice crackled over Mikhail's communicator. All security teams to defensive positions. Mikhail activated his emergency beacon, sending coded signals that would alert his extraction team to the changed situation. The coded warning he'd sent 2 days ago should have brought them within striking distance, close enough to respond to this crisis. Dr. Salthara, how much data can you carry? The complete specifications require massive storage capacity. I can take the theoretical frameworks, but the practical applications. I already have those, Mikhail said. Focus on saving what I couldn't steal. She stared at him, then nodded and began selecting critical files. You're asking me to trust a spy who betrayed us. I'm asking you to trust someone who wants to see your work used to save lives, instead of destroyed by people who would use it to end them. The sound of heavy weapons fire echoed through the station's corridors. The hegemony boarding parties had breached the hull and were fighting their way toward the research sections. Kessa's voice crackled through the communication system. All engineering personnel to emergency stations. Priority evacuation of civilian areas. This is not a drill. Mikhail felt a surge of respect for her leadership under pressure. Even with infiltrators exposed and enemies boarding, she was protecting her people. Security teams to all access points, Vorgash commanded through his communicator. Hostile forces confirmed aboard. Weapons free. Dr. Salthara finished her data selection and sealed the storage devices. If I'm trusting you with my life's work, what's your real name? Mikhail Okafor. He paused, weighing operational security against the trust he was asking for. Intelligence operative for my people. Thousands of our people are held in draconis breeding programs. We can't reach them. Current FTL makes multi-jump penetration suicidal. This technology would transform our entire strategic position. The argument was interrupted by the distinctive whine of hegemony energy weapons. They were close, perhaps one corridor away. There's another way out, Dr. Salthara said, activating a concealed panel. Emergency research evacuation route. It leads to the lower docking bays. Go, Mikhail said. I'll buy you time. Like hell, Vorgash said, checking his weapon. We go together or not at all. As they moved through the emergency passage, Mikhail's communicator chimed with an incoming signal. Agent Okafor, this is Captain Santos aboard USFV Silent Current. We're moving to extract you. Systems crawling with hostiles. What's your status? Research data secured. Multiple civilians require evacuation. Hegemony forces have boarded the station. Mikhail was coordinating on multiple levels, protecting civilians, preserving intelligence, and managing first contact. Request immediate assistance. Copy that. We're inbound to your location. ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes to reach the docking bay, evacuate Dr. Salthara, and somehow get off the station before the hegemony killed everyone aboard. Mikhail led the group of researchers and civilians toward the lower docking levels, Dr. Salthara clutching her research data with white-knuckled determination. Behind them, the sounds of combat echoed through the corridors. Energy weapons fire, shouting, the distinctive crack of crystalline infrastructure failing under stress. Access Corridor Delta 7 is blocked, Vorgash reported over the comm, his voice professional despite the chaos. Hegemony forces have seized the main transit hub, route around through the maintenance tunnels. They diverted into a narrow service passage, the group moving single file through cramped spaces designed for utility drones rather than evacuation. The temperature rose noticeably. These tunnels weren't climate-controlled. Contact ahead, someone shouted. 2 hegemony infiltrators rounded the corner, their weapons rising. But Vorgash was faster, dropping both with precise shots before they could fire. Keep moving, he commanded. They know we're here now. The group emerged from the maintenance tunnel into a secondary cargo bay. Through the viewports, Mikhail could see energy bursts illuminating the station's exterior as the battle intensified. They had maybe 3 minutes before the hegemony sealed all escape routes. They reached the lower docking bay to find Kessa coordinating civilian evacuation with military efficiency. Her amber eyes fixed on Mikhail as he approached. Tarek, or whoever you are. Her voice carried complex emotions, anger, disappointment, and something that might have been understanding. You've got a lot of explaining to do. Agreed. But right now, my people might be the only chance we have. Mikhail's extraction beacon was transmitting continuously now, guiding his team to their location. They're coming. We can get civilians out. Why should we trust you? Because the alternative is everyone dies. The hegemony doesn't leave witnesses. Zara appeared at the edge of the evacuation group, her bioluminescent freckles flickering with stress and confusion. Tarek, Mikhail, whatever your name is, you lied to us for 2 years. Yes, and I'm sorry. But right now, I'm the only chance you have of surviving this. Mikhail met her gaze steadily. I won't abandon you. Not after everything we've been through. Explosions echoed through the station as hegemony forces fought their way closer to the research sections. Time was running out. Dr. Salthara, Mikhail said, can you stabilize the Cascade dampeners remotely? If the hegemony destabilizes the station's crystalline infrastructure, the entire asteroid could become unstable. Yes, I can reroute the controls. She was already working on her portable console. But if the dampeners fail, everyone dies, Mikhail finished. Do it. Through the viewport, he could see USFV Silent Current approaching the docking bay, its stealth systems flickering as it dropped concealment for the rescue operation. Unknown vessel incoming, Vorgash announced. Configuration unrecognized. This better be yours, Tarek. All personnel prepare for evacuation. But as the extraction ship maneuvered toward the docking bay, hegemony forces burst through the main access doors. Energy weapons fire filled the chamber as civilians scrambled for cover. Vorgash thrust a sidearm into Mikhail's hands. If you're helping defend these people, you're armed. The security chief's expression was grim. Don't make me regret this. Protect the researchers, Mikhail shouted, checking the weapon's charge. Don't let them reach Dr. Salthara. The hegemony soldiers moved with enhanced reflexes and military precision, but they hadn't expected coordinated resistance. Vorgash's security teams provided covering fire, while Kessa organized the civilians into protective groups. A searing blast of energy caught Mikhail's shoulder as he threw himself between the advancing hegemony forces and a cluster of civilian refugees. The impact spun him sideways, pain exploding through his chest and arm. He hit the deck hard, weapon clattering away, his vision blurring at the edges. Mikhail's down, Kessa's voice cut through the chaos. Hands grabbed him, Vorgash on one side, a human marine on the other, dragging him toward the airlock as energy bolts scored the deck around them. Blood soaked through his uniform, the wound deeper than he'd realized. The USFV Silent Current locked onto the docking bay with magnetic clamps, its airlock cycling open. Captain Elena Santos stood at the threshold, her expression hardening as she saw Mikhail's condition. Get him to medical. Now, Santos commanded. Continue evacuation, civilians first. They carried him through the airlock into the ship's corridor. Dr. Salthara, Kessa, and Zara pushed aboard with the first wave of refugees, following the Marines as they rushed Mikhail toward the medical bay. Vorgash remained coordinating the evacuation from the docking bay, his security training ensuring civilians escaped in orderly fashion. Critical injuries, the ship's doctor announced, scanners already probing the wound. I need deep tissue regeneration. Scan to assess internal damage. Do it, Santos said, tension evident in her voice. The medical scanner activated, its beam penetrating layers of tissue to map the injury. Mikhail lay on the table, pain pulsing through his body, barely conscious. Around him, the refugees who'd boarded watched with concern. Dr. Salthara hovering near the medical equipment, Kessa standing protectively close, Zara's bioluminescent freckles flickering with distress, Vorgash blocking the doorway. The doctor's expression shifted from concentration to confusion. He stared at the display, then at Mikhail, then back at the scanner readout. Commander Santos, the doctor's voice carried shock. These readings, Doctor, Santos said sharply. Operational security. These aren't biospoofing implants creating false Ferox biology. The doctor's words fell into the medical bay like stones. They're suppression implants, keeping natural Ferox biology suppressed. The scanner display was visible to everyone in the cramped medical bay. Genetic markers scrolled across the screen in unmistakable clarity. Species classification, Ferox. The medical bay fell silent. Not the silence of waiting, the silence of a world ending. Dr. Salthara's crystalline features went rigid, light refracting through her in patterns of frozen shock. Kessa's ears flattened against her skull, her breath catching audibly. In the corner, Zara's bioluminescent freckles flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. Mikhail stared at the display. His mouth moved without sound. His hands trembled against the medical table's edge, fingers gripping so hard the knuckles went white. White skin over Ferox bones he'd never known were his. Time stretched. The ship's engines hummed, distant and irrelevant. Someone's breathing, he couldn't tell whose, seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. No, his voice finally came, barely a whisper, breaking like glass. That's wrong. I'm human. The implants create the Ferox identity overlay. The neural overlay is suppressing your real Ferox consciousness. The doctor's professional detachment cracked under the weight of revelation. You're not human pretending to be Ferox. You're Ferox with an implanted human identity. The words hung in the air, refusing to make sense. My memories, Mikhail's voice fractured. Nairobi colony, my family. Earth, Captain Santos's expression was stone. Implanted, part of the conditioning protocol. A pause, heavy with operational reality. No apology in her voice, just factual statement of what was necessary. The medical bay had become a tomb. 4 witnesses stood frozen, each processing a horror too large to contain. Mikhail's hands shook. His chest heaved with breath he couldn't quite catch. Everything he knew about himself, every memory, every belief, every identity, dissolved like smoke in his grasp. Nairobi colony. Had he ever seen it? His mother's face. Was that his mother? The shaking spread up his arms, through his shoulders, his jaw clenching against the scream building in his throat. 2 years. He stared at nothing, reality collapsing around him. I was just being myself? Dr. Salthara found her voice first, though it came out strangled. You conditioned a Ferox to believe false memories? She turned to Santos, horror mixing with scientific fascination in her multifaceted eyes. Implanted an entirely fabricated identity? The psychological warfare implications. This is monstrous. She pressed a hand against her crystalline features, light fracturing through her fingers. The checkpoint scanner. I vouched for you. I told security the anomalies were crystal exposure. But it was detecting the truth all along, wasn't it? Her voice dropped to a whisper. You are Ferox. Kessa made a sound, half growl, half wounded keen. Her ears flattened completely against her skull. That's... She couldn't finish the sentence. She stood motionless for 3 heartbeats, 4, 5. Then, rage ignited. A low growl built in her throat, rising from somewhere primal and violent. Her amber eyes fixed on Santos with predatory intensity that promised death. You took one of us. Her voice was barely controlled fury, each word bitten off sharp. Broke his mind. Made him forget his own pack, his own kind. Turned him into a weapon against everything he was. She stopped, her entire body rigid, claws extending, retracting. her breath coming in harsh pants as her training warred with instinct. Kill the enemy. Protect the pack. Kill, protect. She took 3 deliberate breaths, forcing each one through clenched teeth. Then her posture shifted. She moved to Mikhail's side, one fluid motion, placing herself between him and Santos with clear physical threat. Your pack. Her voice still carried violence, but now it was directed outward, protective. They stole you, broke you, made you a weapon. But you're still pack. Zara's freckles pulsed with rapid, chaotic patterns, emotions cycling too fast to name. Her fists clenched and unclenched. Everything you believed. She looked at Mikhail, then at Santos. Everything. Your entire life. Your species. Yourself. Her voice rose. You knew. You made him believe he was something else entirely and sent him to use us, to manipulate. She stopped, photonic patterns flickering between rage and something that might have been pity. I trusted you, she said to Mikhail, voice breaking. And you didn't even know who you were. Forgash spoke with the clinical assessment of a security professional, but his voice held an edge Mikhail had never heard before. This level of psychological warfare, he studied Santos, confusion and horror mixing in his expression. What species even develops capabilities like this? You condition enemy operatives, break their minds, steal their identities, and deploy them against their own kind. He paused, calculating. I don't even know what you are. But this. He gestured at Mikhail, at the scanner display, at the entire situation. This is terrifying. Another beat of silence. He's proven his loyalty, Forgash added, pragmatic despite the horror. To us, not to his conditioning. Santos met their shocked stares with grim resolve. No flinching. No apology. Yes, we knew. Her voice was hard as hull plating. The conditioning was necessary for operational security. He couldn't know the truth and maintain deep cover for 2 years. Silence. Condemnation in every pair of eyes. We're a young species. Santos's voice carried weight of desperation now. We would barely inconvenience the Draconis Dominion in open conflict. And so we hide. Unknown to the galaxy. Thousands of our people in Draconis breeding programs. They have our generation ships, but not our homeworld. We need intelligence, technology, time to survive if we're discovered, to rescue our people from facilities current FTL can't reach. Her expression remained stone, even when it's monstrous. The medical bay held its breath. Dr. Salthara's horror hadn't diminished, but something flickered in her multifaceted eyes. Understanding. Or at least comprehension. How desperate, she whispered, must they be to do this? Desperate enough to violate every ethical principle. She looked at Mikhail, this person she'd worked beside, trusted, never suspected. Desperate enough to steal identity itself. Mikhail sat motionless. His hands had stopped shaking, but only because he'd gone numb. The medical bay seemed distant, unreal. These people arguing about him, about what had been done to him, about ethics and desperation and survival. He couldn't process any of it. Which memories were real? Which instincts were his? Was anything actually him? The silence stretched. And then, the ship lurched as energy weapons impacted the hull. Hegemony forces breaching aft section, a Marine shouted from the corridor. All personnel to defensive positions. The crisis cut through the revelation's aftermath. Mikhail tried to sit up, despite his injuries, despite his shattered sense of self. His hands were shaking. His vision swam with confusion. Which memories were real? Which instincts were his? He couldn't process this. Not now. Maybe not ever. Stay down. Kessa's voice was firm but not unkind. She pressed him back onto the medical table. "You're in no condition to fight. Not physically. Not mentally. People need—" His voice cracked, hollow. "People need functional personnel." Kessa's ears flattened with protective determination. "You're not functional. You're barely holding yourself together." Mikhail's hands trembled against the table's edge. He wanted to argue, wanted to stand, wanted to do something, anything that made sense in a world that had just collapsed around him. But his legs wouldn't support him. His mind couldn't focus past the static of shattered identity. "We've got this." Kessa squeezed his shoulder once, a pact gesture, claiming him despite everything. Then she was gone, moving toward the sound of weapons fire with lethal purpose. Dr. Salthara grabbed her research data. "The Cascade dampeners are failing. I can help coordinate the evacuation." She paused at the doorway, looking back at him with something between pity and horror. "I'm sorry for what they did to you." Then she was gone too. Zara lingered a moment longer, her freckles pulsing with chaotic patterns, shock, betrayal, confusion, and something that might have been compassion, all cycling too fast to separate. "Your friendship was real," she said quietly. "Whatever else was lie, that part was real." She left without waiting for a response he couldn't have given. Forgash moved last, his security instincts already calculating tactical responses. "Stay here. Process your trauma after we survive." The medbay door sealed behind them. Mikhail sat alone in the humming silence, surrounded by medical equipment and the wreckage of his identity. Through the bulkhead, he could hear the muffled sounds of combat, energy weapons, shouted commands, the organized chaos of evacuation. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Which memories were real? Nairobi colony. Had he ever seen it? His mother's face. Was that his mother? Every certainty he'd built his life on dissolved like smoke. 2 years living as Tarek Nightclaw, believing he was human, pretending to be Ferox. But he'd just been being himself. A Ferox with implanted delusions of humanity. The ship lurched as weapons impact struck the hull. Santos's voice crackled over the comm system, professional and controlled. "All civilians aboard. Marines. Final defensive positions. Withdrawal in 30 seconds. Mikhail heard it all from a distance, disconnected. Kessa's tactical coordination, her Ferox battle instincts managing the retreat. Dr. Salthara warning about Cascade destabilization. Forgash protecting refugees with ruthless efficiency. The methodical extraction of functional personnel doing what he couldn't. His pack was out there, fighting, surviving. And he sat here, useless, drowning in questions he couldn't answer. Emergency undocking. All personnel secure. The ship shuddered as docking clamps released. Through the medbay's small viewport, Mikhail caught a glimpse of Harmony Station, crystalline infrastructure destabilizing under hegemony assault, chain reactions cascading through the asteroid's core. The research facility he'd infiltrated, lived in, stolen from, becoming an expanding sphere of debris and energy. 2 years of his life. Someone's life. He didn't even know whose anymore. The ship jumped to FTL, leaving the debris field behind. Minutes later, the medbay door opened. Dr. Salthara entered first, still clutching her research data. Kessa followed, a minor burn across her shoulder but otherwise intact. Zara's freckles flickered with residual adrenaline and emotional exhaustion. Forgash brought up the rear, methodically checking the corridor behind them before the door sealed. Santos entered last, her expression carved from stone. The revelation had happened in front of only 4 witnesses: Dr. Salthara, Kessa, Zara, and Forgash. The rest of the refugees knew only that they'd been rescued by an unknown faction. Santos had been careful to keep the Silent Current's designation ambiguous. Mikhail sat on the medical table where they'd left him, his wound treated but his identity in ruins. The four who'd witnessed everything stood in tense silence, still processing what they'd learned. Dr. Salthara clutched her research data. "What do I even call you?" "I don't know anymore," Mikhail said quietly. Kessa studied him with analytical eyes that held more understanding than anger. "You got us out of there. The data you stole, the extraction you called for." She shook her head. "These humans, they stole your identity, made you a weapon. But you chose us. You are of us. That means something." Zara's freckles had settled into a slow, pensive pattern. "Your friendship was real," she said. "Even when your whole world was collapsing, you got us onto this ship." That meant something. Vorgash approached with his characteristic directness. "Whoever these humans are, their psychological warfare capabilities are terrifying." He looked at Santos. "You do terrible things to survive." A pause. "But you didn't need to save us." "That counts for something, for now at least." "What about the other infiltrator?" Vorgash asked. "Tam Voss?" "If he survived, the hegemony has him now," Mikhail said. "He was working against both of us." Santos's expression was stone. "What happens now depends on your choices." She looked at each of them. "You four know the truth about humanity, about our conditioning programs, about our desperation and our capabilities. We're hidden," Santos continued, "unknown to the galaxy. Thousands of our people enslaved in Draconis breeding programs. If our existence becomes known before we're ready, if our location is discovered, they'll come for us. Finish what they started." Extinction isn't hyperbole. It's a calculated timeline. Vorgash's tactical mind was already processing implications. "You need us to keep silent. I need you to choose." Santos's voice carried no apology, only operational necessity. "3 options. Choose carefully." She began counting on her fingers. "First, work for humanity. Permanent relocation. Dr. Salthara, we need your expertise. You'd continue your research with resources you can't imagine." Kessa, Vorgash, tactical analysis, security consultation. Zara, photonics research. You'd never return to your previous lives, but you'd be valued, compensated, and you'd help rescue those enslaved by the Draconis. Second option, return to your lives. Keep our secret. But, her expression hardened, operational security requires insurance. You'd undergo voluntary conditioning, not identity replacement like what was done to Agent Okafor. Just memory safeguards, subtle. You'd remember we rescued you. You'd remember we're called humans, but location, capabilities, specific technologies, those details would be protected, compartmentalized. You couldn't reveal them even if you wanted to. The medical bay fell silent. Third option, Santos said quietly. You refuse both. In which case? She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. You'd kill us, Zara said, her freckles pulsing with shock. I'd protect my species, Santos replied. 30 billion lives versus 4. It's not a choice I want to make, but it's one I will make if necessary. Dr. Salthara's crystalline features showed careful calculation. Your conditioning program is monstrous. She looked at Mikhail. What you did to him, taking a ferox, erasing who he was, making him a weapon against his own kind. It's an atrocity. Yes, Santos agreed, no defensiveness in her voice. It is. But you're also offering to rescue thousands from breeding programs. Dr. Salthara clutched her research data. My Cascade drive technology could reach facilities current FTL can't. Save people who'd otherwise die in captivity. She met Santos's eyes. I choose the first option. I'll work for humanity. Not because I forgive what you did, but because Agent Okafor chose to save us, despite what you did to him. That choice, his choice, earned something from me. And because your victims in those breeding programs deserve rescue more than I deserve the comfort of moral purity. Conditions, she added firmly. Oversight. Accountability. My research used only for rescue and defense, never conquest. And answers about other conditioned agents. Santos nodded. Humanity is in no position to go to war. That will change one day, however, but only insofar as we will be required to. Kessa's ears flicked with internal debate. Finally, I will return. She looked at Mikhail. Your pack, Velthara. But I have responsibilities. My team, my position. They need me. Her voice softened. The conditioning. I understand why you need it. I hate it. But I understand. Vorgash spoke with pragmatic assessment. I also return. He studied Santos. Your psychological warfare capabilities terrify me. But every species does terrible things to survive. You saved us when you didn't have to. That counts for something. I'll keep your secret, with or without conditioning. But I understand operational necessity. Zara's freckles pulsed with conflicted patterns. She looked at Mikhail. Your friendship was real. You chose to save us even when your whole world was collapsing. She turned to Santos. I'll work for humanity, not forever, but a year. Help with your photonics research. Assuage my conscience that I'm helping rescue enslaved people. Then we renegotiate. Santos's expression showed something that might have been respect. Fair terms. All of you. Mikhail sat in the center of it all, his identity shattered, but surrounded by people who'd chosen, each in their own way, to see beyond the deception. I don't know if I'm human, Ferox, or something new, he said quietly, but I know who you are to me. He looked at Kessa and Vorgash. My pack. That's real. Whatever else is lie, that's real. Velthara, Kessa said softly. Biology doesn't change that. 6 weeks later, in human space, Dr. Salthara's research accelerated dramatically. Within 3 months, the first Cascade drive prototype was operational. Within 6, rescue missions began reaching Draconis breeding facilities previously beyond reach. Zara worked alongside human photonics researchers, her expertise accelerating their technology by years. She kept her year commitment, then another, eventually stopped counting.